across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. And once again, I pointed out on Monday. I'm going to point it out again today. On Saturday, it is the 10th anniversary of the launch of Talk Radio, as we were then. You remember the black logo with the microphone? Yeah, well, that was us. Launched back in March 2016, as I pointed out on Monday. Quite a quiet year for news. Not much going on. Yeah, it was a rip-roaring start to the station, and we have grown ever since. There was that little blip of bit of madness in between, but we are back completely on track, and I cannot thank you enough. Whether you tuned in on day one back in March 2016, you came to us, an awful lot of people during those Brexit shenanigans 2019, an awful lot more during lockdown. But I'd like to remind you, I mean, you know, there are other stations available now, but we were the only station where presenters were actually saying, are you sure this is all a good idea, folks, when it comes to lockdown? An awful lot of the questions, a lot of the things being raised, by the way, the COVID inquiry. We got a Module 3 report out today, and all these reports going, oh, it turns out this was a problem. Oh, it turns out that was a problem. If only anyone knew it at the time. Well, if you've been listening to our station, you've been listening to my show in particular, you would have known it was a problem, because we were talking about that stuff very, very early on, just weeks into the pandemic. So I'm really proud of what we've done there. Really proud to have you join me. I am still overwhelmed by people coming up to me in the street, wherever, and just saying, oh, thanks for getting me through lockdown. Proudest thing I think I've ever done. I'm hoping we can go on to do more things. We've been on the right side of history on Brexit, on the lockdowns, on the immigration debacle. We have seen we've been on the right side of history when it comes to trans versus women's rights, on freedom of speech. You name it, we have been on the right side of history, and we couldn't have done it without you, and I cannot thank you enough. I say, if you joined us, you know, March 2016, thank you very much. If you started listening on Monday, we are very, very, very grateful to have you on board. Pass the word on. No one who's told about us, as far as I can gather, seems to ever turn us off after, because they realise they don't have to listen to the absolute nonsense that's being put out on the BBC these days. Anyway, great to have you on board. So much to talk about on the show. If you miss anything on the show, missed anything from this week, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking about, I mean, just extraordinarily, after those comments from Angela Rayner about apparently, quote, tough immigration reforms, stopping the Boris wave being able to basically stay here for the rest of their lives and be entitled to benefits within a few years. That's going to be raised to a 10-year bar. Oh, what a terribly tough reform that is. Angela Rayner thinks that's a breach of trust. I mean, doesn't seem to care about the British people having a breach of trust, because we didn't ask for all those people to come in, and we didn't expect to have to pay for them either. But Keir Starmer apparently is signalling a U-turn on those reforms, could be watering them down. I mean, they can't be watered down anymore, for the love of God. We'll talk about that. Also, the Albanian criminal who's won the right to stay in this country over, you'll remember this case, we've brought it up so many times, his son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets. You genuinely couldn't make this stuff up. You don't have to, because the real life stuff is even madder than anything you could make up. Also going to be talking about a small matter of, you know, World War III over in the Middle East. Trump says the US will blow up a major Iranian gas field if Iran attacks Qatar again. They attacked Qatar after Israel attacked some of the Iranian oil fields. Is this kind of creeping out of control? And do threats like that to Iran actually work, given that, oh yeah, they're complete lunatics? We'll talk about that. Plus, that meningitis outbreak is hit a second at Kent University as the vaccine rollout begins for some 5,000 students. As I say, so much to talk about. I want to hear from you on all of the topics we are talking about, including, I mean, this push to take us back into the EU. Good luck with that, Zach Polanski, Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan, indeed. I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular, though, on Keir Starmer saying he could, well, not he hasn't said, signals from Number 10 about the consultation the Home Office is having on this immigration reform, which would affect the rights of 1.6 million migrants, 1.6 million who came during the Boris wave, and their rights to stay in the UK, basically getting permanent settlement here after just 5 years. And Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has announced in the last few months, no, she wants to extend that to 10 years, even for people who are already here. Could Keir Starmer U-turn on that because of the left outcry? Is this all about getting votes in the local elections? Is it about just keeping his head above water with the threats of reform on the right and Greens on the left? I want to hear from you. Angela Rayner said those reforms were un-British and a breach of trust. Are they? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also message us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message and posts on X, of course, are free. I'm delighted to say joining me today on this, I'm going to pretend it's my anniversary edition since I don't work on Saturdays. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Welcome to you.
It's good to be here. Isn't it great that 10-year-olds are talking lots of common sense?
Well,
and
we try.
Exactly.
We do try. We do try. Genuinely, I would genuinely worry about where this country would be if we didn't exist. We are small but perfectly formed. Yeah. But we have had influence. I've spoken to quite a few MPs over the years who talked about the information that they've got from our show that has enabled them to things like vote against certain policies. And also saying the stuff, you know, when people go, oh, they're so brave, they're saying stuff. Well, we were saying a lot of this stuff for quite a long time. And yet we've had all the name calling. I've had the name calling since 2000 when I was writing in the Sunday Express going, I don't think we should be having mass uncontrolled immigration. Thanks ever so much. No one asked me, no one asked the public. I've been talking about this stuff for so long. Yeah. You know, I've said to bosses many a time, you should listen to me. I do know what I'm talking about.
And yeah, we get some fantastic guests, and we can go into a little bit more.
And you.
Well, yeah, I don't count, but we can go into a little bit more depth because we spend a bit more time than the soundbite transmissions we get out of the mainstream media.
I genuinely, though, there's not a guest I don't have, which I could think, I wish I could have done half an hour with that guest. Yes. As always, but that's why I talk so fast. Get it all in. Anyway, look, let's start with it. I mean, we're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. I know, you know your stuff as a former military man. Yes. But I mean, we've basically just to, we've got this announcement from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. I've never drunk the Shabana Mahmood Kool-Aid. People seem to think she's a future leader of the Labour Party. She is neither a man nor white, although I think she is straight. So she has one out of the three requirements for being the Labour leader. So it's not going to happen. Seriously, you've got a better chance of being the Labour leader than Shabana Mahmood. Sorry, we know how the rules are.
Is her constituency North London? I thought that was
it's a good one. You have to go to the same dinner parties, exactly. But she's been Miss Hardline Home Secretary. She talks a good game. Whether she delivers, another matter. They rarely do. Any Home Secretary of any party, it seems. But this is about these migrants who came in the Boris wave. And we're always talking about net migration during 2023, which was the worst year. 944,000 people. That's net migration. The actual number of people who came to this country was 1.4 million people. So some of those were students, they've gone back, but 1.4 million people in 1 year came to this country, and a heck of a lot of them are still here. And within 5 years, so it's 2026, they will be entitled to have indefinite leave to remain, or to apply for it, permanent settlement. She's basically saying we want to raise that to 10 years, and also have that test, various tests about are you contributing or no. The vast majority of these people, unskilled, low-paid work. Often very important work, but nevertheless not highly paid. They are not net contributors to society. There are the halves, usually their wives, and their children are definitely not net contributors. So we're paying for all of them. They reckon if all these people are able to basically get permanent settlement in the next few years, then we are looking at a £10 billion cost in extra benefits, universal credit and help with public services and things like that. After this was announced, Angela Rayner, in her bid for the Labour leadership, she said these plans are un-British, pulled the rug out of behind underneath hard-working families, and she said they're a breach of trust. Keir Starmer now apparently. They're not confirming they're going to press ahead with these plans. So we're looking at a possible U-turn on these plans. Should there be a U-turn, or should there not be a U-turn? And do these plans even go far enough?
Well, there should not be a U-turn. In fact, they don't go far enough as it is. And in defence of the Home Secretary, and you say you don't know whether she's going to achieve anything. She can't achieve anything if every time she comes up with a policy and her leader accepts it, then a few weeks later he U-turns on it, and he's U-turning on everything. But that £10 billion, I'm going to add an extra fee onto it because the illegal migrants that are coming in is another £3 billion. Yeah. We're at the most dangerous point that we can be in the world at the moment. And we can't afford to put more money into defence to try and protect us and keep us safe, because we're spending £13 billion a year on legal and illegal migrants.
I mean, I think legal and illegal are very different. But the point is, the whole point of legal migrants, they're supposed to be contributing to our economy. But we know, I always knew this, they were always lying to us about this. Actually, well, again, you get some French banker or some American entrepreneur or something coming up. Yeah, they're great net contributors. We'll have more of you, thank you very much. You get someone who's got no skills, no qualifications, turning up from the Indian subcontinent or from sub-Saharan Africa, or actually often from Eastern Europe. I'm so sorry, they are not net contributors.
But the other thing is, and especially with the legal ones, this is a slippery slope. If Andrew Rayner does this, then everything is going to be loosened. And we are at the minute in a time when Iran's next step is going to be the stimulation of terrorism on our streets. They're already importing people, and we know that the Russians are behind a lot of the criminal gangs that are doing it into this country. They're all fighting age men that are coming in. We are importing and paying for threats to this country whilst not paying enough to our security services, our police forces and our military to try and defend us. And then we've got people who are not contributing to society. So it's undermining the very fabric of our society
and
at the same
deliberate.
time. And it's deliberate. This is deliberate policy by this government.
Well, here's the thing. Is this all about basically appealing to the left? There's this view that Mahmoud was like, they're trying to sort of push to appeal to the right. And again, no government has been elected to this country of any political hue since Tony Blair that has not promised to cut down on immigration. Every single one of those governments has raised immigration. Tories put it on, rocket fuel. Stratospheric Boris way under Boris Johnson, an unbelievable breach of trust of the vote he got in 2019 and the Brexit vote as well. This lot, we know they don't believe in cutting immigration. Labour, this lot, they want open doors to everybody, no borders. That is their mantra. But they knew they got that threat from the Tories and from the Reform Party 2024, and so they made these pledges. They don't really mean any of them. They're going to go through the motions. Again, Boris Johnson didn't mean anything he said either. But they've now got this threat rising on the left from the Greens. Now, interestingly, the Unite Union leader, Sharon Graham, very influential figure, big funder of Labour Party. She said that that Labour basically, she's just been very, very clear that they are looking at being decimated, all but decimated at the general election, at the local elections. Now, if that is the case, pretty much, incorrect use of the word decimated, as it's usually means 1 in 10. There's a reason why that word exists. But Labour are basically saying, we're going to have to go to the left to shore up our supporters, students, people in the inner cities, the middle class intelligentsia, the lanyard class, because they've basically given up on whole swathes of the Red Wall.
Everything that Keir Starmer is doing at the minute is focused on domestic politics and trying to save his skin and save the skins of local councillors and local MPs and members of different assemblies in the upcoming elections.
I think it's all about Keir Starmer. I don't think he cares two hoots about councillors.
Well, but he knows that if they don't, if Labour don't hold up the support, then Keir Starmer's toast. And this translates into not just this policy, but the debacle that there's been over support for America or not in the early days with America's attacks into Iran and every other policy that's coming out. He's using everything to try and save his skin and put this big Teflon umbrella above him. And it's so obvious.
It really is, isn't it? Again, we've got these scandals, they keep on coming, and again, we're obviously all bigots and racists for even talking about these things, but we're going to do it anyway because those words simply don't mean anything to anyone anymore, I'm afraid. But we've all talked about that case of the migrant who fought deportation. And can you it's just mad. Deportation back to Albania. This is Clevis Disher. He fought deportation by arguing that his son didn't like foreign chicken nuggets, and he won the right to stay in Britain. Now, he's 39 years old. He entered Britain illegally under a false name, lied in a failed asylum claim, and that emerged about a year ago. And it was cited as an example by everyone sane of an example of the European Convention of Human Rights, basically using ridiculous excuses for people to be able to stay in this country. Of course, that was the right to a family life, so it would be unduly harsh for his son, who's aged 11, would have to join his father in Albania or be left in Britain without him. So this right to a family life superseded our right to just not have an illegal migrant, a criminal in our country. Yeah, the Home Office talked tough. They said they were going to expel him. I mean, he was jailed for 2 years in 2017. He should have been removed straight away. Well, he shouldn't have been in the country in the first place, and he should have been removed straight away in 2019. But he's still here, 2026. And he made this asylum claim. He's claimed political persecution. He'd falsely claimed he was born in Yugoslavia back in '86. I mean, he gave a false name. I mean, on all of these grounds, you should be absolutely gone. But he has won the right to stay in Britain. And you just, I mean, at that point, you may as well just say, let's not even bother having border control. Let's just not even bother wasting our time or our money on the nonsense. And let's just say, come on, anyone who wants to come here, our chicken nuggets are lovely.
Well, I've had chicken nuggets in Albania,
I'm not a fan of chicken nuggets.
And they taste exactly the same as the chicken nuggets.
Isn't the whole point of McDonald's that your chicken nuggets taste the same in every country?
In fact, well, if you're going to the chains, and the local chicken nuggets in the local things taste better, and you can get to Albania on EasyJet, Ryanair, and all the cheap. It's a safe country. He needs to be kicked out.
Exactly, but this family life stuff again. I don't even care if it's not a safe country. Genuinely, I don't care anymore. I keep saying this. I'm done. I'm done. And it's just this idea of, well, they've got a kid here. It's like, doesn't matter if you've got a kid here. The
Americans will throw you out if you say a tweet against Donald Trump.
We don't. Well, I disagree with that, though. But we simply do not have a situation where, you can have an anchor baby. So if your kid is born here, they've got a right to stay here. No. You can either be with your kid or not be with your kid. I don't care. You're not here anymore. But actually, rather your kid wasn't here either, because we're going to be paying for them. By the way, just breaking news. We've just had an announcement from the UK Health Security Agency confirming there are now 27 suspected cases of meningitis. Now, that is definitely, we've seen a big spread in those cases. It went from 15 to 20 yesterday, now up to 27. Again, with a 2-week incubation period, we are going to see that developing. We'll come back to that in just a moment. We've also got a Nigerian migrant who raped a 19-year-old girl. Actually, a woman. 19-year-old is a woman. He was not deported after a previous sexually motivated attack because, again, of his right to family life. Again, it's a Nigerian national, Gift Oladele. He was found guilty last week of raping a 19-year-old woman in Woodland near Wrexham last September. It's now been revealed for the first time. He was jailed back in 2022 for 2 years, falsely imprisoning a woman in Manchester who feared she would be raped in broad daylight. Again, and then unable to stay in the country. When you see these protests of women, mums, grandmas, and teenage children, whether it's in Kent or in London or wherever around the country, basically saying we don't want these men in this country. These are a danger to us. The incidence of sexual assaults from certain nationalities in this country, bearing in mind by definition a lot of these people are only here through going through criminal routes and therefore are more likely to be criminals in the first place, and they're young men, but the criminality rate is so much higher among these men from these countries. Why? Because they come from a country where women are considered to be second-class citizens.
And commodities.
They're commodities, so it's not an issue. They just simply don't see anything wrong. And we've seen judges saying that, like, I understand from your cultural background, you don't understand that you shouldn't be raping women, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, we need to throw them out, or I can't say on air.
Stop them coming in.
And stop them coming in, and I can't say on air what I'd like to do to these people, because that would solve the problem completely.
No,
and there's a big queue of people.
The way you get around this,
it costs about 75 pence.
I've discovered the way you get around this, because you can't call for any physical criminal acts. Of course, you cannot. Yeah. However, you can call for a change in the law that would allow it.
Yes, definitely.
I'm just saying. Yes. I'm getting to that way. Let's talk about what's going on with the Middle East. Over the last 24 hours, we have seen Israel launch an attack on an Iranian oil field, which they basically it's in the Gulf, which they share half and half with the Qataris. Israel launched that assault. The Iranians then launched an attack on the Qatari part of the oil field. Qataris are like, oh, sorry, we're not involved in this. Although, Qataris, you like to play a good game. Yeah, you dined with the devil a little bit too long, didn't you? Harbouring Hamas and everyone. Yeah. Sorry, tough, no sympathy. But Trump now, fascinating, from the White House, issued a statement overnight, basically saying, we didn't know anything about this. Israel did this airstrike without our knowledge, and if Iran strikes Qatar again, then we will massively blow up the entirety of Iran's South Pars gas field, this being one of the biggest gas fields in the world. this is kind of bubbling out of control, isn't it?
It is, but we shouldn't let what Donald Trump says, where he clearly doesn't completely understand the picture, make us come to the conclusion that's all bubbling out of control. So we have to put it into context that there's a Trumpism in here. It's the largest gas field in the world. It's shared between Qatar and Iran. The Iranian bit of it has been severely curtailed because of sanctions and all the rest of it. So the majority of the gas out of this gas field comes out of the Qatari
This is the liquefied natural gas that we buy because we don't drill so much in the North Sea.
Yeah, we
rely on this. Is this something that's happening on the other side of the world? This is something that matters to us and what we pay for our energy bills.
Exactly. So we want to stop this tit for tat against the energy infrastructure, because we're going to need that to be turned back on again once the Straits of Hormuz is reopened.
And indeed the Iranians will need that if they're able to overthrow the Islamist regime.
Yeah, correct. And the likes of the Chinese and all the rest of it do not want Iran's oil and gas capability to be interfered with, because that'll affect their access to it and everything else. So it's in the global interest that oil and gas infrastructure is not damaged. Iran's been attacking oil and gas infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in Bahrain, and elsewhere. All during its responses. So this isn't the first one. And why the Israelis...
But everyone's going to criticise Israel because Israel gets criticism for doing exactly the same thing that Iran's done.
But why Israel chose to attack this
and would the Americans not know? I find it very unlikely
the Americans will know.
Donald Trump didn't know.
The Americans will know, because they'll have to have deconflicted the airspace before they get in. The Americans are controlling large parts of the airspace and everything else that's in there, so of course they're going to know. But why the Israelis chose to do it, I don't know. I don't get the military logic behind it. Now,
but the Israeli war aims are different from the US war aims.
They are different, but actually if you step from the outside and you look at Israeli actions, I can see the logic behind the targets that they're hitting in Iran and all the rest of it from a straight military perspective. I don't get, knowing their war aims, the logic behind them hitting this particular target.
Very interesting, really interesting. Thank you very much indeed. So much more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we are talking about. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that meningitis outbreak coming up. We're also going to be talking to Brendan O'Neill in a couple of moments as well. In the meantime, I'm going to take your calls. Love to hear your thoughts in particular. Again, you can choose. If you want to call on something else, you're absolutely welcome to. But Keir Starmer could, we're told, U-turn on immigration reforms to the rights of 1.6 million migrants who arrived in that Boris wave to stay in the UK. This is after Angela Rayner branded them un-British. Basically, our bills, our welfare bills, and the number of people we're going to be competing for housing and school places and GP appointments in the next few years is going to be entirely decided by Labour leadership battles. That's what's really happening. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back. 10:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 8344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Daniel is in Epsom. Daniel, you want to talk about this potential U-turn on the tightening up, vaguely tightening up immigration. What do you want to say?
I just think I personally think that that native British people in Britain are being systematically replaced. I mean, some people have been calling it kind of a genocide and a silent genocide, and I think it is.
I will not have that word, monsieur. It's bad enough they lie about it in Gaza. That is a word that has a specific meaning, and we cannot just throw words like that out. It's not. No one's being killed.
Yeah, but we are being systematically replaced against our will, and that.
Are we not being replaced? We're being added to against our will.
Yeah, I know, but in the long-term prognosis, the long-term future, if you look at the projections, is awful. And I've got children. I've got a stake in this country. I've got a stake in its future. And I drive around London, and it looks like nothing. I'm 49. I grew up in SE21, and it looks completely different to when I grew up there. I've tried to escape it. White flight. I've got out to Epsom, and it's followed me out here. I can see the decline and degradation all around me. The British people for like 30-odd years have been voting against it. And we've had it.
Now, you use the term white flight. It's been long been used by sort of demographers. It's just like, it's basically, indigenous people leaving the inner cities then becoming full of, ethnic minority immigrants and their subsequent generations. Is it about the colour of people's skin? Is that what bothers you?
What really bothers me is the numbers are so vast that there's no need for them to assimilate. I always liked the country before 1997. By the way, we had zero public debt. We were in the black in 1997. We now owe £3 trillion.
Yeah, small point worth making.
But before 1997, there were black and Asian families living around you, but the country was much more homogenous. There was 25% less population. No one really seemed to have a problem. We got over the 80s, Brixton riots, and in the 90s, we got over it.
I have to say, my memory certainly of growing up, went to uni, went to school in the 80s in my secondary school. I can certainly remember that race was not something that people talked about particularly. It really was not. That was something that people had largely, and especially in the 90s, we felt that things had moved on, and now it's a massive big issue. But I don't think this is about race. I think people they see visible change in the fact that the colours of people's skin is a very noticeable change in major cities. But I don't think it's got. I mean, I couldn't care less what colour someone's skin is. I really don't. But I don't think it is about skin colour. I think it is about, as you say, it's sheer number of arrivals, but also people arriving from different cultures and not assimilating and not adapting.
Yeah, Julia, I think proud black British families and proud, say, second, third generation Indian families would feel the same as native British people do.
I completely agree with you.
And I think they have eyes too, and they can see the decline and degradation in society. Since 1997, we've seen a wholesale change of Britain against the British people's wishes, and I hope that the right could align. I'm going to vote for reform, so is virtually everyone I know and most of my family. Yeah. And I just hope we can have some recourse, because for 30 years we've been begging the governing classes, stop doing this to us. You're ruining our society. Mass immigration from the third world is destroying the fabric of Britain, and something needs to be done like 25 years ago.
Is it too late? I mean, that's the thing. We had a really interesting interview with Matt Goodwin earlier in the week, and he's been talking about the demographic change, and as you say, the long-term demographic change, particularly in specifically the growth of a Muslim population in this country, is huge, and the implications of that for our politics, our foreign policy, and freedom of speech, again, in terms of blasphemy laws and things, is absolutely huge.
Well, let's just say that they win, and in 2060, 2070, the native white population are down to sort of really 10, 20%, and say we leave, and they've got Britain. And what will it be? It will just be a third world hellhole from which their parents and grandparents came from to escape a third world hellhole. But you can see the decline around you now. The more mass immigration you have from the third world, particularly the Islamic third world, the more your country resembles it. You know, the change in I'm 49, right?
The change in your and my lifetimes has been extraordinary. And again, not only did we not ask for it, we expressly said we didn't want it at every election from 2010 onwards.
Yeah, and it's absolutely ruining my country, and I'm worried about my children's futures. And this current government are only going to exacerbate it. I think we need mass deportations. I think we need to lay down some ground rules, a British Bill of Rights. This is how we live. If you don't do it, you're going. I think we need to be. We need bold, brave government, of which we haven't seen for 40 years.
Really great call. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for your, again, speaking out openly about, the concerns. And this is shared by a hell of a lot of people. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Philip. I hope you're both well.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's the good morning. It's the ideology side of it. Immigration is good news, the right type of immigration. Yeah. But what we've got is an ideology that's coming on, and it's extremist. And it doesn't matter what Rayner does. Starmer will go, she'll come in and go further to the left, and she just rewrites a new page for either Reform, Rupert Lowe, or the Conservatives' manifesto. And the markets will destroy the next Labour leader. We'll have an election before October, mark my words.
Yeah, everyone says this. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but I just don't see it happening that soon. Andrew, great call. I know we'll speak to you again soon. Lots to talk about with our next guest. Here's the chief political writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. He's up next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is indeed Talk. Brendan O'Neill joins us now. He's chief political writer at Spiked Online. Very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia.
Love to get your thoughts actually on what my guest Philip Ingram has had to say, but also the callers Daniel and Andrew have had to say about this signal. We haven't had it confirmed, but Downing Street are refusing to confirm that they want to go ahead with Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary's reforms. And they used a phrase in the papers, tough reforms. I mean, lol. Tough reforms on migrants. So there's this 1.6 million migrants who arrived during the Boris wave, who would have a right now to basically, stay here forever. They can apply for permanent leave to stay within the next year or two, but stopping that and saying, no, you're going to have to be here 10 years and then we're going to have more requirements to prove that you're actually a net contributor, which, let's face it, statistically, most of these people will not be. Do you have any expectation that they're going to continue with those reforms, or what do you think is going to happen?
The fact that they won't say one way or another, they're being very quiet about it, that's worrying in itself, isn't it? But you're right to be cynical about the idea that these are radical, dangerous, scary reforms. They're no such thing. This is perfectly normal behavior for a nation state. Yeah. I hate the way that we've lost sight of that. I hate the way we've lost sight of the fact that a nation should be free to decide who comes here, how long they can stay.
Fascist. I think that's what I'm supposed to do at this point. Is that not?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. We're fascists for believing that a nation should be sovereign, should welcome people in and then tell them to leave. That's what nations do. That's what they've always done. The thing is that even if these reforms are pushed through, I mean, the truth of the matter is that most of these people will end up staying. It's going to be 10 years. I don't see any future government having the will or the gumption to do what nations have done forever, which is to say you need to go home now. So it's a mess. It's a complete mess. But I was really struck when Angela Rayner described the reforms as un-British. I tell you what's un-British: selling our sovereignty for a pittance, throwing open our borders, ignoring millions of working class people who are very worried about this problem. That's what's un-British. I think Angela Rayner should be ashamed of that.
I mean, and again, also, Miss Proud Socialist Working Class Warrior, but, bringing in millions of people who are then competing with working class people for jobs, for housing, for GP appointments, for decent schools. And again, and as we know, we've been lied to for 20, 30 years about this. Net migration is not an economic benefit to this country unless you're very choosy about who you take. Are you an engineer from Germany? Come on in, the water's lovely. Are you an unskilled peasant from a village in Pakistan? Not so sure we need you, thanks ever so much for offering. And that's the reality of the wave of migration we've seen, particularly that Boris wave from outside of the EU. And again, absolute we talk about betrayal. I mean, Boris Johnson is the ultimate traitor when it comes to that. He knew exactly what British people were voting for, and it wasn't to shut down free movement from the EU in return for free movement from Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly right. I just think, since when has it been part of the social contract that British people have to look after people from other countries? It's preposterous. And every single day now, Julia, it's literally every day, and I hate having these thoughts, but they just invade your mind. I walk past someone or a group of people in London, and I think to myself, why are you in this country? And what I mean by that is that these are people who are not working. Some of them live in a small tent city down by Warren Street in London. Others are obviously homeless. They're obviously from overseas. What benefit is it to us that they're in the country, and what benefit is it to them? They're swapping homelessness in a foreign country for homelessness in London. But of course, if you have these thoughts, you're racist, you're a fascist, you're a problem. It should be really open for a free society to ask who's coming here, why, and why we are having to pay for this.
Exactly. There's a lady who's been begging outside my local supermarket in Tube Station for... I mean, we've lived there for almost 20 years, and she has been... Sometimes she sells the big issue, sometimes she's begging. Remember, the big issue is supposed to be getting people off the streets. She always got a sign saying she's hungry, please give me money. Look, judging by the size of her, I've got to be honest with you, I don't think she's been hungry for half an hour, let alone a day. I'm not being rude, I'm just being accurate. She's quite a chubby little thing. And I speak to her and I go, still hungry, I always say. Still hungry, still haven't got a job, and I've spoken to her, and she's Romanian again. I said, were you here legally or not legally? And she claims to be Romanian. I don't know, maybe she's from somewhere else. But again, I said, but if you're here legally, you're entitled to benefits. Are you getting benefits? Have you got housing? If you're not here legally, then you should go home. But those are the two options. Oh, I don't know, let's throw in you could get a job. You could get a job. Mad idea. But either way, we're definitely paying for her.
It's just preposterous. The whole thing, the whole discussion. My parents are immigrants to this country. I grew up in a part of London with lots of immigrant communities. If your parents didn't find work when they came here, they would have been on the first boat home.
Exactly.
That's why they came to this country. I'm not just talking about the Irish. I'm talking about the Greeks. I'm talking about Italians. I'm talking about Indians. Lots of people came to this country to work, and if they hadn't found work, they would have slung their hook. There would never have been a presumption that Britain should look after them, should furnish them with welfare and housing and food and everything else. That would have just been such an alien thought to every immigrant community.
Yeah, and the fact that
1997.
You've got the likes of Angela Rayner talking about pulling the rug out from underneath of hard-working families and these plans to not allow these people to stay beyond British. But again, the point is, if they're allowed to get permanent right to stay, then they're entitled to benefits. Well, if they're hard-working, why do they need benefits?
Well, exactly right. Why would they need us, people who do work, to pay for them to stay here? Angela Rayner's comments really wound me up, because what's un-British is her unwillingness to treat our borders seriously. And as you say, she poses as this great warrior for the working classes, but seems not to give a damn about working class concerns, both economically and culturally, by the intake of all these migrants, who most of whom shouldn't be here. So she doesn't care about what working class people are thinking.
I mean, for many, many years, we know that the uncontrolled mass immigration was basically about big business saying we'd love a load of people who are willing to come and work very cheaply, and to hell with the consequences, not our problem. And that Labour did it, the Tories did it, and and it was carried on against the expressly given will of the British people at every election. Now it seems that this decision is being taken basically ahead of the local elections, ahead of what may well likely be let's face it, a Labour leadership contest with Keir Starmer down in the polls. We've got Angela Rayner calling for a move to the left, backed by Andy Burnham as well. We've got Ed Miliband on the green issues. A lot of them are trying to push the party back to the left, but also take on those green votes which have been lost to Zach Balansky, who gets far too easy a ride in the media for his absolutely mad nonsense policies. And basically the party, it looks like the Labour Party is basically saying, sorry, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, you talked a good game on trying to take on reform and making Labour Party look like it's vaguely sensible-ish on immigration. We're not going to bother. We're going to lurch to the left. Our immigration policy is basically about the future of Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham and others, rather than the good of the country.
Exactly right. All that these people are thinking of is their own backsides, saving their own derrieres, saving their own political future, saving their own jobs, clambering to the top of this clapped out party called Labour. That's all that they're thinking about. And they don't care about the consequences of their policies, or whether they're popular, or whether working class voters want them. None of that enters their minds. It's incredibly self-serving. But if Labour does lurch to the left again, if it does go down that road of saying, throw open the borders, migrants are all wonderful, trans women are women, all white people are racist, if it goes back down that road where it has been before, it's a busted flush. It's finished. Because I tell you, people are sick and tired of that politics. When I heard Nick Timothy, for example, being called Islamophobic and racist and the scum of the earth for raising an entirely legitimate concern about mass acts of public praying, I thought to myself, you know what? Those slurs just don't work anymore. People are going to speak out, express their concerns about the crisis of integration, and they don't care about the insults that the left throws at them. So Labour's on a hiding to nothing.
We talked a lot about that on the show yesterday and the day before, and it's very interesting. Lee Kern, who's a British man who's moved to Israel, I met up with him when I was in Tel Aviv, and he made a very, very interesting point, because we're talking about this about inclusiveness. Lots of different religions have had have their religious festivals celebrated in Trafalgar Square, so this is just an anti-Muslim sentiment. Again, I think specifically prayer is rather different from a festival that happens to mark your religious occasion. But Lee Kern has sent a brilliant tweet, and I forwarded it to Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, who does follow me. He doesn't allow people to reply to any of his messages, but I'm allowed to, because he does actually follow me, and he has personally berated me for my messages criticising him, so I know he sees them. And this is what Lee Kern wrote. Will the London Mayor and Labour government allow us to hold a Drawing Mohammed event in Trafalgar Square? It will be a wonderful opportunity to celebrate freedom of speech and tolerance in this wonderful city. Everyone will be welcome, Muslims, Christians, Jews and atheists. I mean, he's got a point, hasn't he?
Oh, brilliant point. And you know what? Not a bad idea. Maybe we should apply for the right to have such an event in Trafalgar.
Well, no, because I don't want to live in hiding for the rest of my life like the Batley Grammar School teacher.
Yeah. There is that concern that there would be this incredibly fundamentalist, violent response. Yeah, that is a worry. But, you know, he's right to raise that concern, because, of course, the answer to that would be no, not on your Nelly, don't even think about it. That's what they would say. You know, I think Nick Timothy's comments were incredibly useful. He ignited a really important public discussion. He also freely expressed his heartfelt beliefs, which is always a good thing for someone to do. The really shocking thing was not what Nick Timothy did, but the response. Keir Starmer saying he should be hounded out of politics as if he was some kind of heretic. People calling him a bigot who has no place in public life. There's this medieval response, almost like a witch hunt, where they want to shut down the man who dared to speak ill of a religion. That's what's really shocking in this story.
Absolutely. I must also just ask you about where we are, the Iran war. You've spoken out very strongly and vehemently in favour of Israel's right to exist and right to defend itself. What do you make of the coverage, including about the BBC? I would say Sky News has pretty much BBC Mark II these days, and their coverage of this war and their I suppose the criticisms of the Israeli attacks when they attack, and also particularly in Lebanon. Where do you stand on that?
The BBC's coverage is awful, and they're just presenting it as a completely catastrophic war, an apocalypse, the worst war ever. I'm sorry, but these are the people who told us there was a famine in Gaza. Yeah. These are the people who told us that it's a genocide, everything Israel does is a genocide. I'm sorry, we don't believe you anymore. We don't believe what you say because you've cried apocalypse once too often. You know what really strikes me is that when Israel's war with the Islamic Republic tragically kills civilians, that's called a war crime. But when Israel takes out actual regime tyrants, that's also called a war crime. Everything Israel does is seen as a war crime. And essentially what these people are saying is that Israel should do nothing to tackle the Islamist despots that are persecuting its people, invading its lands, raping its women, murdering its citizens. They're basically saying do nothing. Take it on the chin, Jews. It's not a big deal. That is fundamentally the rallying cry of these Israelophobes, and I find it really gross.
I could talk to you all day. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online. Sadly, time is against us. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Philip Ingram, your response to that? He's a former senior military intelligence officer still with us in the studio.
Well, he's right when it comes to the opinion that's placed against Israel, especially from our mainstream media. And our mainstream media channels try to say that, but if you watch the whole thing or you read the whole story, we will bring the balanced argument in that.
It's the headlines.
But it's the headlines, and they forget that actually they influence now because everyone's driven by the headline that they see on that sort of thing, rather than just inform, and they haven't got that.
But even just the coverage of things like Lebanon, like this illegal war against them. Sorry, Hezbollah has been implanted itself in civilian areas in Lebanon, is basically bigger than 3 times bigger than the actual Lebanese army, and have been sending rockets for years, but particularly since October the 7th into Israel. This is an act of self-defence. I don't understand why there's even a query about that.
But it's not an illegal war. The United Nations Security Council resolution that partitions off southern Lebanon turned around and said that Hezbollah had to be disbanded. And that is why there's UN peacekeepers in there as part of the deal. Yeah. They haven't been disbanded and they continue to attack Israel. It's not illegal. There's a UN Security Council resolution that authorises what they're doing.
Even if there wasn't, it still wouldn't be illegal. 10:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about things closer to home. And that meningitis outbreak, it's announced today. We've got 27 suspected cases of meningitis. How concerned should we be? We'll talk to pharmacist Tory. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me as well. Let's talk more about that meningitis outbreak in Kent, which of course has been known to spread to London. It's now affecting, we know, 2 different universities. It's spread to a second university in Kent. And we also know now that we are looking at 27 suspected cases rather than, it was 15 at the beginning of yesterday, then it rose to 20. And of course, we know also a 9-month-old baby is among those who's very sick in hospital. Let's talk to Tory who's a pharmacist and healthcare expert. A very good morning to you, Soren.
Good morning. Always lovely to join you. Sad to be about this matter,
we rarely get to talk to you about something fun, do we? It's nearly always something negative. Look, this meningitis outbreak is already claimed 2 lives, a 6th former and a student. I mean, very, very young lives, very, very worrying. It's spread now to Canterbury Christchurch University as well. But we know that the epicentre, ground zero, really, was this chemistry nightclub. And early, in the first week of March, 3 nights when patients seem to have been at this club in Canterbury, 5th, 6th and 7th of March, including a French exchange student and 6th formers as well. First of all, how is this disease spreading? And what does it tell us if the cases are rising now about the risks?
Okay, this is an unprecedented situation, and I don't use those words that often, but we don't have, this is bacterial meningitis, and it's rarer than viral meningitis, but when we do come across it, it does tend to be a worse situation. The situation at the moment is that overall, to people who have been outside that Kent area and who haven't been close contacts of those individuals, the overall risk remains low. But for those people who are in those areas, in this nightclub, we know that we know how this is spread, bacterial meningitis B. It's shared by saliva, it's that sharing cups, utensils, lipsticks, a bit of snogging, and also coughing, sneezing. It's close contact. So what has now happened is the close contact, so people who live with people who were there, are then being offered prophylactic antibiotics, and that is essentially just to manage, to sort of get ahead of the situation. And that's for people who may already have come into contact. We know we saw those lines of students, where most students, by all accounts, at Kent University have now gone home because Easter break. There's no parties at the Students' Union, and there are no exams, so they've all gone home. But those antibiotics, people who've been to that club, been in close contact with someone who's been to the club, and that will actually prevent them from getting ill. So if we think about how this bacteria is spread, some of us have this in our throats, and it's doing nothing. It's not causing an illness to us. In some people, that the levels of that bacteria will increase to levels where it causes a problem and starts to cause symptoms of things like fits, so seizures, high temperature, a rash which can't be seen after when you put a glass on it. So, but
it can be. See, we had to look that up twice yesterday. So if you put the glass on it and the rash goes away, that's not meningitis. If you put the glass on it, press down, and it does stay there still. But as we know, the rash is often quite late on. It's the head, the headache, feeling ill, the headache, the stiff neck. Those are often the earlier signs.
Yes, but the problem is sometimes people don't get those symptoms. Yeah. So you may have what you think are hangover symptoms, but they could be meningitis symptoms. Yeah. And if you've been to a club, you may have been drinking.
Well, exactly.
So it's more about encouraging people to watch out for their friends and friends and colleagues. And in a university setting, you're away from home. You might not have someone checking in on you as often as your mum knocking on the door to check you're up after that hangover the next morning. Yeah. So making sure that we're looking after our people around us and watching out. I think vigilance for me is
That's the key. Do you think the UK Health Security Agency were a bit remiss? I mean, we can all be supportive of these people, but on Friday they found out there might be an outbreak. Yeah, look, it's not like we never have any cases of meningitis. We have cases, and sadly people do still die. It's massively gone down since we've had vaccinations, certainly for the viral meningitis. But you know, there are still cases. But they didn't notify people at the university until Sunday. They only contacted the club via social media on Instagram rather than actually calling them up and going to the. There's a bit they could have got on top of this a bit sooner, couldn't they?
Getting on top of this as quick as possible is always going to be the best thing to do. What I would say is I thought it was pretty clever that they contacted the club via social media, actually, because you know as well as I do, you call up these places, bars, you can't get hold of anyone. So the fact that they went through that step is a positive thing. But the focus now is on getting hold of the contacts of people. And we're going to talk about vaccination here, but this vaccination for meningitis B hasn't been rolled out for these students, so a lot of these students won't have had meningitis
kids
B.
Who basically it's been rolled out, so 12-year-olds will be having it. So the next generation going to university will, but not the kids this age at uni.
Exactly, because it was 2015 that this started to be rolled out, the meningitis B. But there is a different vaccine for meningitis, which has been being given to freshers and students before they went to university. The problem is that doesn't cover the meningitis B strain, basically.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of people getting hold of jabs, a lot of people say, well, you know, I haven't got a kid at Kent University, but, you know, but it's spread to London, my kid's in London, or it's spread to Manchester, or my kid's in Manchester, or whatever. People being concerned, can they get hold of this jab? Because there's been some accusations that pharmacies are hiking up the price, and 200 quid is the price.
Well, number one, not all pharmacies provide this. It's not an NHS service for this to be provided by pharmacies. Two, a lot of pharmacies won't have the stock in the first place because it's not a routine item that we're providing. And I think unless you're in Kent or close to this, I don't think people should be trying to access this vaccine right now. We need to focus the supply on those who really need it, which is in this area.
Very good point. Thorin Govin, a pharmacist and healthcare expert, thank you very much indeed for that. Philip Ingram, I mean, this is the thing. Be wary, be aware, be vigilant, but let's not all go into mad, crazy health panic and putting on masks and the nonsense.
Well, the masks help because coughing and sneezing is a direct way of this being spread, and the
masks don't.
No, well, and they stop people from vaping as well, and therefore sharing their vapes. And in this occasion, it is very good, and the bacteria is much larger than the virus.
Yeah,
so it does help.
That's a fair point.
And you also have to recognise meningococcal B. 1 in 4, 1 in 5 carry it, and it can stay dormant for months.
Very good point. We're going to go to a quick break. So much more to talk about. Stay tuned. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, it's great to have you joining us. If you're watching on YouTube or your connection device, great that you are here as well. If you've missed anything from the show so far, frankly, you're crazy. What were you thinking? Don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're discussing more about, well, will there, won't there, probably be a U-turn by Keir Starmer when it comes to supposedly tough immigration reforms from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, after Angela Rayner, vying for the leadership contest, which is undoubtedly going to happen in the coming months, she branded them un-British. Also going to be talking about Donald Trump saying the US will massively blow up a major Iranian gas field if Iran attacks Qatar again. This after Israel attacked the Iranian oil fields. Also, an Albanian criminal who's won the right to stay over his son's dislike of foreign chicken nuggets. I did not make that up. That's actually real. We've been talking about that story for a couple of years. And genuinely, he is actually now able to stay for good. Plus, the Nigerian migrant who raped a teenager. He's avoided deportation over his right to family life as well. I mean, where do you even start, guys? Where do you even start? Also going to talk about, I know it's not as important as any of those stories, but it does matter because it does tell us quite a lot. But one of King Charles's own charities cancelling a girls' boxing course between 16-year-old girls to 25-year-old women for disadvantaged girls to basically get physically strong and to be able to defend themselves. There was a backlash because a parent said, why is this open to people who present as female or identify as female, i.e., men can come and join this boxing as well, which means you could have a 25-year-old man punching a 16-year-old girl in the face. Yeah, they allowed that at the Olympics, but we'd rather it didn't happen to girls in our local area. So what did the charity do? Did they ban men from the women's event? Of course they didn't. They just cancelled the whole thing. That's the mad territory we're in, folks. Anyway, all of that coming up, plenty more besides, and your calls, crucially. Love to hear your thoughts on all topics we are talking about. Keep it clean. We can't put you on air otherwise. I can't tell you how hard it is for me to keep it clean throughout 3 hours every day, given the madness we're in. But in particular, Keir Starmer, we're told, could U-turn on immigration reforms. These are for the rights of 1.6 million people who arrived during the Boris wave of migration, the epic sort of explosion of the number of people, largely from the Indian subcontinent, from Nigeria and elsewhere, to stay in the UK. Now, basically, after 5 years, you get the right to apply, unless you get it automatically, although it's clearly automatic, permanent right to settle here in this country. And Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who apparently is, hardline, wants to raise that to 10 years. I would say maybe unless you are genuinely paying way more tax than you cost in public services, you shouldn't be allowed to stay at all. Mad idea, might actually work. But Angela Rayner branded those reforms apparently as un-British and a breach of trust for those hard-working people who've come to this country to make a life here. No thoughts of the hard-working people paying taxes to fund them. No thought of the breach of trust of the British people who were not only never voted for mass immigration, but actively voted against it every single time they were given the opportunity. Want to know your reaction to all of that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say, still joining me today, as he always does on a Thursday, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning to you.
Again, yes.
Let's go back to the Starmer here. First of all, I mean, did you think that it was Shabana Mahmood, this Home Secretary, this consultation from the Home Office out at the moment, her plan to do this, basically 1.6 million people, and this was something being raised by Reform, and the Tories going, hold on a minute, these people have all arrived, and if we don't change the rules now, they're all going to be eligible. And apparently there's a £10 billion cost. For all these people who are working, contributing and not a burden, we're going to end up paying an extra $10 billion over the next few years to fund their access to public housing and housing benefit and universal credit and God knows what. Kind of a bit of a giveaway that they're going to be a cost if they get to stay, isn't it? It's a bit of a giveaway. Do you think that those reforms were right, and were they enough in the first place?
They're right, they're not enough, they need to be stronger. We need to make sure that people who are not contributing to our society And in fact, if people do not integrate with our society and therefore undermine the very fabric of our culture, they need to be removed from this country, and we need to have a mechanism to do that. And I also find it a bit galling that Ange is coming out and
Orange
is coming out to try and say that she wants to spend more taxpayers' money, this 10 billion, when she's got something about not paying her fair share.
If only everyone paid all their taxes, exactly.
So it's typical Ange, left of Labour hypocrisy once again.
I'm as shocked as you are.
Yes.
Absolutely. But it wasn't enough anyway. We had a caller earlier, regular caller actually, Daniel, talking about how, look, we're going to need mass deportation. We're actually going, that's the territory we're going to be in. Now, obviously, everyone who's here illegally should be deported. I don't understand people thinking that's a bad thing. I'm genuinely utterly perplexed. Well, so people who's not allowed here should be allowed here? I don't get it. But so anyone who's come here illegally, anyone who's stayed illegally, overstayed your visa, I mean, I don't mind giving people this. You've got a month to get out of the country. If you don't leave after a month and we come and get you, we're going to confiscate all your worldly goods. No, I mean, it's going to get nasty. Off you toddle, pay your own fare, take your stuff, sell your home. Off you go, and then you'll be fine. But I genuinely do think that we are in the territory where we're going to have to say to an awful lot of people who come in certainly in the last 10 years, I'm sorry, if you're a dual national, if you're not working, contributing, if you don't speak English, if you're not fully on board. To be for you and your children to live as Britons, I think we do need to say, sorry, you're no longer welcome here, and we're going to make it impossible for you to stay.
Yeah, and if you don't culturally integrate and then contribute to society as well, that doesn't mean to say that you have to deny your own culture. I get a train a lot of mornings from Birmingham down here, and at the same time there's a mate who's a Sikh man, and we had this very conversation, and he's second generation, and his parents came in and integrated into society, and he was saying the very same things. He was saying it's ridiculous the number of people that are coming in here who are not integrating into society. Yep. And he doesn't deny Sikh culture, and nor should we deny anyone recognising their culture or anything else. But it's not imposed, and it's not at the cost of integrating into wider British society.
I'm still utterly perplexed that anyone want to go and live in a country and make a new life for them and their families and not want. Why come to Britain then if you don't want to live as if you were in Britain, as opposed to living as if you're in Pakistan or Sub-Saharan
But government policy is enabling people to live in their little cliques and almost making it the only option that there is. And we need policy to change and
that's partly down to just the sheer numbers. I mean, it's just you know that. You think even if you go to a party, you've got a load of mates that you know from work or something, or from
everyone
uni
gravitates
or something.
the same.
You end up talking to them. If you arrive and there's just like one or two of you, you're going to make more effort with other people. It is just that simple. It really. I mean, it's a glibber analogy, but it's an accurate one. It really is. The reality of this, of course, is that this isn't about immigration policy. This isn't about the best thing for Britain, or indeed for migrants, in my view. This is about Labour Party infighting, isn't it? This is Angela. She's been backed by Andy Burnham on this. She's speaking out. She's talked about how Labour needs to to deliver change, or it's going to be gone. This is about fighting out for who's going to be in the best position to fight for the Labour leadership after the local elections. If, as everyone expects, the local elections could be disastrous. I mean, Sharon. It's interesting, Sharon Graham, who's the head of the Unite Union, very powerful figure, and she said we're looking at Labour being pretty much decimated, she says, in those local elections. Now, if that is the case, I mean, no one wants Keir Starmer to cling on. Realistic, I can't see a position where he's not going to face a leadership election.
The only reason why he's in post at the moment is until the local elections are dealt with, because any new leader doesn't want to have that as the first thing.
Exactly. In which case, we are basically got the future of our country, community cohesion, which they claim to care so much about on the left, our economy, everything. That is going to be entirely your chance ability to get into a school, to get you need people to get social housing, getting a GP appointment, paying for everything. Your future taxes are going to be determined by this Labour leadership contest.
Oh, very much so. And our international standing as well is being determined by this Labour leadership contest.
National foreign policy.
The damage that's being done with our relationship with the United States and our dithering about what's going on around the world has put us in an even worse position with our European partners, our US partners, our Middle East partners are now questioning our motivations and our ability to stand by them. It's shocking.
Yeah, although the useful thing about this Iran war, it has exposed that we are just not prepared. We can't just defend our own interests. We can't defend our own country, I would say, at this point, which is a bit of a worry.
Defend the Solent.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, look, Donald Trump has said, leading on to Iran, Donald Trump has said that the US will, massively blow up. Is there a way of not massively blowing something up, but the major Iranian gas field? This is if Iran attacks Qatar again. This is the Iranian attack on the Qatari part of the oil field is one they share in the Gulf with half and half. Is biggest oil field gas field in the world. Yes. So each of them has one of the biggest. But basically the Israelis attacked the Iranian side. And the Iranians basically then attacked the Qatari side. Now the Americans are saying, we'll attack the Iranian side. Are you keeping up at the back if you attack again? Donald Trump is saying they had no idea that Israel was going to carry out that attack. You think that's highly unlikely given how integrated those two forces are? Well,
it's not just those two forces. We've got British jets flying in across the Middle East. We've got other international jets flying across the Middle East. We've got all the Middle East countries that are there. The people that are coordinating it are the American-led headquarters that are there, and they have to control who uses what airspace. And if you're going to fly a jet or you're going to fly a missile through airspace to attack a target, then you have to clear what you're doing through that airspace.
The Americans knew.
And therefore the Americans
knew.
So
that's a load of abject nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very surprised that Donald Trump is not abreast of the facts. Shocker. What do you make of the whole thing? Because there is a concern there, which is, if the Iranian people are able to oust this Islamic regime, they do need to have an income, and Iran could be a prosperous country. Yeah. One of the reasons why there could be some hope for Iran is because you've got a highly educated, secular country where they have got natural resources, and they could actually, be a viable state and not become a hellhole like Iraq, or Syria, or Afghanistan. And yet the chaos we've got, and let's talk about, the Navy, we're not going to be sending ships to the Middle East because the situation is too fluid. Keir Starmer's managed to stay out of this, but basically, let's face it, by accident, by dithering. And he didn't make a clear decision. It was just the cabinet fought back at him. But what do you make of the whole? I mean, is it just a whole quagmire? Is it a whole mess?
No. It seems a mess to people who don't understand how military actions go. Okay. You're not going to, coming up to week 4, you're not going to achieve a decisive effect in 4 weeks. This is not a video game where you go out and you get a big score and then you move on to the next level.
Isn't that worryingly what Donald Trump expected of Venezuela?
Put Donald Trump to one side, because there are grown-ups in the room who deal with it. And therefore it's hugely more complex, and therefore it's going to take time before we see any green shoots of the real issues that could lead to the overthrow of an Iranian government and the stopping of the attacks and everything else, and that time is being filled up with the BBC and their disinformation, with lots of other people speculating, people questioning the motivations behind this. You're not going to know what the final objectives are from a military perspective. So hugely complex militarily. The dithering that Keir Starmer's coming out, he's lying to us. He was the United Kingdom provided capability to the United States. That was part of the planning for the US operation, that helped identify the targets for the US operation, that helped the US execute the operation, that looked at some of the bomb damage assessment that happened immediately afterwards. And he's lying to us when he says we didn't participate, because he's focusing on his backbenchers, he's focusing on the local elections.
But then you have the decision that we won't allow it to go at Diego Garcia based on some sort of legal technicality nonsense.
And it's complete and utter nonsense in what he's doing. He's got.
Should we be more involved anyway? Because look, there's a lot of European leaders saying, "Look, this is Trump. This is you. This is a you and Israel thing. It's not our thing." But at the end of the day, as he's pointing out, Straits of Hormuz closed. Now, it doesn't seem they've done much planning on that front. They're closed. That affects us rather more than it affects any American.
We are fully involved in everything that's going on at the moment. What we're not involved in is dropping bombs into Iran.
Right, okay.
But we have RAF jets flying on a nightly basis over Qatar, over other Middle East countries, shooting down Iranian drones that are coming into attack and being part of the defensive position. We should have more capability down in the Middle East, in the Red Sea, providing greater defences for our Middle Eastern country allies and everything else. Will that help the Americans and the Israelis? Yes, because it provides a defensive umbrella for them to then continue to launch their attacks.
They can get on with what they're doing.
And everything else. Should we be contributing to trying to reopen the Straits of Hormuz? We are. We've sent planning teams across to the United States. The British have just taken over command of the Joint Force Command, the NATO command headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia, which the Americans sit down with. That controls a lot of the naval operations around the world.
So we're doing a lot of backroom stuff, really.
Well, yeah, but the backroom stuff is really important. That's the planning. That's where all of this is worked out. That's where your objectives are worked out. And that's where you then work out what assets you need to get. Everyone's focused on what we've got out there immediately doing stuff. No. There's so much more you have to understand before you do that. And now's not the right time to have assets physically sitting there. We need to get them prepared and get them ready to go.
Do you think that the Americans did think they should? Again, I don't think Donald Trump thinks anything through, but I would think that the likes of your Marco Rubios and stuff would. There's a lot of very clever people involved. We had that resignation of that counter-terrorism guy, but again, he's issued, I mean, as far as I can tell, every half hour he says something completely different on the issues in terms of the Iranian threat. Do you believe that Iran did pose, and we spoke to Ben Hodges, former commander of the American army in Europe, and he says, look, Iran wasn't an imminent threat. That I mean, again, how do we characterise it imminent? Because Iran was clearly a permanent, ongoing threat to Israel, and if they were able to get a nuclear weapon, would be a threat.
Well, I can give you a perfect analogy. American interests have been attacked directly or indirectly through Iranian proxies, i.e. Hezbollah, Hamas and all this, which are directly controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps 170 times in the last 12 months. So can you imagine your husband standing beside you as someone punches you and kicks you 170 times? Would you take 100, or would he take 170 before he steps in?
I like to think maybe after 100 he might say,
well,
which is had enough.
Exactly. Or would you fight back before you get it? And therefore, that's the context that America has responded in, and we need to turn around and recognise that and stop saying.
I think even in a state saying "Death to America," and that alone, that's a declaration of war.
Oh yes, very much so. But Americans had been physically attacked, and American passport holders, American citizens, had died in those attacks.
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial. Really interesting to hear. I'd love to hear your reaction to what you had to say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. I also want to talk to you about things closer to home. Obviously, we're working with our American allies, but also keeping in with our European Union allies. Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, never out of the news for long. He says that Labour should pledge to rejoin the EU in its next election manifesto. He's also said that we should rejoin the common market, the customs union and the single market before then. I'd like to point out you can only do that under the EU rules if you abide by all four pillars, and that includes free movement of people, which is what he's always said he wants. We know this because we watch the fireworks on New Year's Eve, and there's always an EU flag, and he's always leading on about we're London is open. Yeah, but we'd like to choose who comes. I know this is a mad idea. My door is open when I invite people to my home, but I don't just say anyone who's passing by pop on in. But he wants Labour to pledge to rejoin the EU. Rachel Reeves has said in a speech this week she wishes Brexit had never happened. We knew that already. Who are we kidding? We know that Keir Starmer's Ramona-in-Chief as Shadow Brexit Secretary actively trying to prevent what was going on. The Liberal Democrats, neither Liberal nor Democrat, they actively campaigned against the, not just against Brexit, but also against the referendum being enacted and their pledge to rejoin the EU. Zach Polansky, the new Green leader, said that Britain would rejoin the European Union if the Greens won. There's a lot of talk about rejoining without a referendum. If it's in your manifesto, you've got the mandate for it. A likelihood of this happening, and B, can we rejoin without a referendum?
Look, squirrel, because that's what it is. Because Keir Starmer can see the attacks that are going in against him. And therefore, he can see what disaster he's made on the international stage. He can see the disaster that he's made with our EU partners over what's going on in the Middle East. He can see the disaster that's happening across the board. He can see his defence policy being exposed. The defence investment plan part of what should have come out with his strategic defence review has not been published, and he can't produce a date for it. And therefore, what he's doing is he's creating something to try and create other headlines to distract people from everything else that's going on over there. And he'll then try and deal with that somewhere else and suddenly go, maybe we can get a policy and see if people like that. So it's a distraction. It's a Luke Squirrel.
But it's a very popular policy with a lot of Labour voters, very popular policy with certainly a lot of Labour MPs, and particularly in the cabinet, and of course a lot of the people who they are losing to other parties on the left. Do you think, and again this comes back to the Labour leadership bid on when it comes to immigration, that actually there was this idea that Labour had to sort of appeal to those disillusioned Tories, but also likely reform voters, those red wall seats that went to the Tories in 2019, to win them back they had to be promised to be strong on not going back in the EU and also on immigration. They made those promises. They're going to renege on them. We know they are. They're gradually trying to do it basically by the back door. But now they're going, you know what, we've got reform, and the Tories on the right, reform are still riding high. We've now got the threat on the left, and it's the Green Party that's taking our votes. So we've lost those reform ones. Those are gone. So we're actually going to try and get those Green Party votes. In which case, we're looking at Labour moving massively to the left.
Very much so.
Because the Greens are, I can't even see that far left.
The Labour Party are desperately trying to find something to hang their hat on, that they can suggest that is going to provide some future for those that are on the left of the party, because they came into power because effectively the Tories lost the last election. Reform took the remnants of any votes that there were that might have got some Tory MPs over the edge. Labour pandered to the Muslim vote and got a few of their MPs over the edge for that. And there was no opposition to Labour. Now there's a massive opposition to Labour with the Green Party and Polanski. And then we haven't yet seen any impact from Jeremy Corbyn's party, but that will take some of the very far left as well. So we're seeing the Labour vote split at a time when they were actually shooting themselves in the foot, reloading and shooting themselves in the foot again. So they're going to lose this.
It's going to be very interesting few months and years, isn't it? 11:23 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on any of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. We're going to get to your calls just one moment. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Just to let you know that the Conservatives have been launching their local election campaign for England this morning in a big rally. James Cleverly was introducing her introducing Kemi Badenoch to the party faithful at this rally when things went a little bit wrong. This will be rather clearer for those watching on YouTube than those just listening, but I'll talk you through what actually happens, because we've had a little bit of a technical glitch at that Tory launch. Watch and listen right now.
But just in case anyone has forgotten just how good she is, let's just remind ourselves with a quick look at her best bits.
It's going to be long. It's going to be long.
This is where the video comes on, please.
DVD.
I'm going to give it one more second for the video. Actually, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Forget the video.
Awkward. I mean, very uncomfortable. Pretty well handled, I think, to be fair to the Shadow Housing Secretary there, James Cleverly. But they had a big slide that came up saying, stronger economy, stronger country, and it was supposed to, these things. It's all glamour and glitz now. We've gone a bit American style, haven't we, Philip Ingram?
Yeah.
In terms of Reform do that stuff very well.
Yes.
Had to be said. Labour is still intent on, and a lot of the parties still do this, of having people standing behind them. Usually, the hoary-handed working classes standing. But it's either nurses or it's sort of, men in hard hats standing behind. And, of course, it's always incredibly awkward because they're always standing there thinking, this is the most boring thing I've ever been at.
You just read their faces and you go, I don't want to be here and I disagree with everything
and my boss is making me do it.
My boss is making me do it.
Yeah. Or even if I did want to be here, 20 minutes in, I've changed my mind.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Anyway, all rather awkward. But yeah, don't forget the tech, guys. Don't forget the tech. It's got to work. All right, let's go to your calls. So Shirley's on the line in Cotswolds. Shirley, you want to talk about this possible U-turn on this, let's face it, not remotely tough immigration reform that the Home Secretary had been looking at. What do you make of it all?
Hi, Julia. No, what I think is that when the Tories crashed out at the last election, I think that is the last time that we will ever see a right-wing government being Tory or Reform.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll tell you the reasons why I think that. I'm not sure how many immigrants we've now got in the country. I think it's over 1 million.
No. Over 1 million is known illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
No, legal migrants, we are in the tens of millions.
Yeah. And from now to the next general election, especially on days like today, they will be coming over in the hundreds. Now, none of these illegal or legal migrant, well, certainly illegal, none of them are ever going to vote for a right-wing government because they've already been told that they'll be deported. So we are in a mess. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Keir Starmer, in Prime Minister Questions, he rarely attacks the Green Party. He only attacks Reform.
He's obsessed with far right, isn't he?
The Greens are his nemesis at the moment. But he is now, because of this announcement today that's come from Angela Rayner, he's now aligning himself with the Greens, and he will do anything to stay in power, even if it means hooking up with the Greens to win the next election.
I've got no doubt at all. And I think a hung parliament is still the most likely option in the next election, because the way that, the votes fall in so many different parties. But yeah, I've got no doubt at all. Labour, Lib Dems and Greens, whatever they say beforehand, would hook up. But I also know whatever they say now, the Tories and the Reform Party would hook up as well.
I agree, but I don't think that it
won't be enough.
As you point out on a daily basis, education, healthcare, there are so many areas now. The media, everyone is left-wing. Well, the majority, I would say, are left-wing. And I think that we've lost it. And I hate to say it, but I think it might be time to leave and last one out, turn off the light.
Well, you say left wing, but the interesting thing is, of course, actually, even Labour voters, in terms of welfare reform, the two-child tax, child credit benefit, but on limited immigration, most Labour voters are in favour of that. I mean, again, we talk about sort of people in the left, the academics, the teachers, and all of that, and media being left wing. But actually, that's not the majority of people in this country. The majority of people in this country are working in small businesses, and going on, and I think are actually, moderate centre-right, which is where I put myself.
Yeah, I agree, but they need to get out and vote, because
people need to vote.
The amount of women I talk to, I could pull my hair out. They don't know what's going on in politics, and they don't know the importance of the next vote, because unless we all get out and vote, because Reform are the only party, and Tories to a point now, but I can never forgive them for what they've done.
I think a lot of people feel that way. But I think it's interesting when you say you think that's been the last right-wing government. My view was that when Labour came in, when Labour being as bad as they are, they'll be the last left-wing government for a little while at least. But I just think the main thing is never ever make predictions in politics, because we'll always be wrong. Things are so changeable. Shirley, a great call. Sorry you're so despondent. I understand that sentiment there. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Laura Jane, you want to talk about the meningitis outbreak, don't you?
Yes, good morning, Julia.
Morning.
I basically feel that a lot of the universities and the health authority have not given out the correct messages. It isn't an airborne disease. It is through sharing the vape.
Well, no, we spoke to an expert yesterday who was saying that actually it is, again, I was talking, it's sharing things, but actually very close contact. So it can be airborne.
Yes, but the use of masks is a complete waste of time, as we have known.
Yep.
And the other thing is that what's a little bit interesting, and you and I always disagree on our conspiracy theories, in September, the government website will prove this, they put in a huge order for meningitis B injections, A, for the children, the young ones, and B, for young adults for gonorrhea. And as you know, it treats both. But it seems to me a little odd. What?
I thought you said, as you know, I did not know this. This is not common knowledge.
Well, I guess I'm sort of trolling. As I say, I'm always a little suspicious when suddenly things get out of hand.
Oh, wait a minute. You're thinking they knew about or orchestrated this meningitis outbreak?
Yep.
What?
In one word.
Laura Jane, come on. What's in the water around your way in Hampshire? Why would they do that?
Well, you can argue now that they're looking at the way COVID developed, and they are worried that actually, after all, it was a setup by the Chinese. With you look at some of the things that are coming out now that we all said at the time, and it always.
They developed. The Chinese developed this. I've not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that it wasn't actually at the Wuhan lab, and that they were deliberately developing that. I don't think they deliberately released it. I think that was a bit of an error, and then they compounded that error. But why would sorry, I don't think very well of this government, or indeed of our health authorities and others.
Because
they're not going to go around killing teenagers and 9-year-old babies.
It's more about control, Julia. They want, in all areas, whether it's the Muslim vote, the dominant...
Sorry, I think this is madness. Sorry.
I know. Well, I don't know what's in the water here, but I think we all need to do a bit more reading and digging.
I'm just saying, genuinely, I think whenever people are conspiracy theorists, I'm sorry, my view is you just have a much higher view of the people in charge than I do. I've met a lot of these people. I know a lot of these people. They're not competent enough to have a conspiracy. Trust me. And I don't actually think they're that malign. I think they're just useless and selfish and slow. And then they get their egos like Matt Hancock and the others. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go to that. But there we are, Laura Jane. I always appreciate you calling. Thank you, my darling. 11:35 is the time. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 11:37. Let's get straight to my next guest, who's Hamish de Bretton Gordon, OBE, former British Army Colonel, who joins us to talk about where we are with the war against Iran in the Middle East. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Just first of all, what do you make of Donald Trump's threat to massively blow up the oil fields which could owned by Iran in the Gulf? This after Israel attacked Iranian half of this Gulf field, and then Iran basically retaliated against Qatar. What do you make of the Trump allegation claim that, well, he's going to, there will be a retaliation again if there's another attack on Qatar in terms of the attack on the Iranian Gulf gas field, but also they claimed that the Americans had no idea that Israel was going to attack?
Well, there do seem to be quite a lot of decisions, Julia, being made off the hoof at the moment by President Trump. And as you say, it would appear that the Israelis might be doing things in isolation, which is creating problems, even more problems we've got at the moment. And the threat to blow up this massive gas field, I assume President Trump believes that will be the sort of straw that breaks the Iranian camel's back, but also it could have a really profound effect. And it all, I think, goes to the point of what everybody's discussing at the moment, the Strait of Hormuz, and the fact that it's shut, and the fact that all of us who've been looking at this for ages sort of realised that was always going to be the Achilles heel. And now Trump is trying to open it again when you would have thought they'd have a load of plans in place because it was so obvious that's what the Iranians.
This is the thing. I mean, I'm no strategic expert, but I no military knowledge or whatsoever. But yet it seems really obvious, just the basic geography. And we know it's not like it's a tactic that Iran hasn't used before many a time because they know they've got that power. Isn't this part of the issue with wars these days at all? Which is that it's same with Israel and Hamas. Israel was fighting a military war. Hamas was fighting a PR war, social media, fighting a war back home in America and Europe to get, recognition for a Palestinian state and the like, and condemnation of Israel. And ultimately, they're hoping a lack of military and financial support from countries like America, which is an important military ally. But at the same time, we've got Iran, again, fighting with America. But Iran is fighting an economic battle. Whereas Israel and America are fighting a military battle. If you're fighting two different wars, how do you know who's won?
Well, you're absolutely right. What we're seeing is basically the Americans and the Israelis are fighting a symmetric war, if you like, and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranians are fighting an asymmetric war because they can't compete conventionally with Israel and the US. So the Straits of Hormuz, that's asymmetry at absolute best. They're doing one thing that is really paralysing an awful lot of what the US is trying to achieve. So therein always the challenge, and that is always going to be the case. So the US needs to come up with ways to nullify this. And I think, as you mentioned, it's nothing new. The Strait of Hormuz being used by Iran. They've used it many times in the past. The West has succeeded, and I do take a bit of hope. People might not remember the Iran-Iraq war back in the late 80s, but in those days, British and American special forces secured the Straits of Hormuz, which allowed Western shipping to go in and out during the Iran-Iraq war. And I think rather than putting loads of ships and Royal Naval ships that we don't actually have, I hope the Americans are looking at something more like Operation Prime Chance back in the 80s, using special forces rather than trying to bludgeon through with capital ships.
Of course, this was, of course, all before drone warfare, which has been an absolute game changer, has it not? It's interesting. My guest in the studio today is Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. I'm sure you all know each other.
We're all friends and colleagues.
You're always old friends. And he's of the view that there's no way in the world that the US didn't know that Israel was going to strike this Iranian gas field. failed, but also that there has been, British involvement in a lot of the planning and all of this. And we're talking, Keir Starmer was talking a good game about us not being involved, but we actually are very much involved. How should we be more involved? Should we have, often the use of the Diego Garcia base to the Americans right from the start? Should we have been supporting the US, or is this very much, an Israeli and US war and nothing to do with us? What would you say to that?
Well, I'm afraid it is everything to do with us, but it is certainly not a NATO operation. This, as you say, this is Israeli and US one. But we, of course, are involved. There are hundreds of thousands of Brits and in the Middle East who need to be protected. And as we're seeing now, you just look at your local petrol station, the price of petrol's gone up by 20 or 30%. So, of course, it involves us. And anything we can do to stop that, we should be doing. But, I'm sure, as Phil has discussed, that there is not a lot of British hard military capability that we can supply. But, when it comes to planning, and Philip was a strategic planner and I wasn't, so he can probably better comment, that's exactly where we can help. And also our beleaguered special forces. The irony should not be lost on anybody that this is actually Starmer's get out of jail card, his ace card, and potentially he's going to ask those very people who he's allowing to be run through the human rights courts for stuff that they've done allegedly done in Iraq and Afghanistan and Northern Ireland, where it's actually that they have been keeping us safe in our beds for decades.
And our special forces are renowned around the world, and highly rated as among the very, very best in the world. In terms of where this all ends, such as anyone knows, people say, well, maybe just a few days. I worry sometimes that Donald Trump thought he was going to have another Venezuela, and this would be just in a few days. Iranian regime collapses, the people take over, democracy, kumbaya, kumbaya. Doesn't look anything like that. Any of that is happening. Or are we being... and it was something that Philip Ingram pointed out earlier, thinking this is like a video game and people just expecting war to be quick, to be clean, no civilian deaths, and the weeping and wailing of gnashing of teeth of our very liberal media, sort of, Sky have been doing reports all week from inside Iran, talking to people who were at the funeral of one of the tyrants of the Iranian regime, talking to the victims. Of course, a mother whose child has been bombed in the war is going to be horrified. But I don't think we had those sort of reports from Germany during the Second World War. Are we at the point where the West, we just sort of can't fight a war because our expectations are just completely unrealistic now?
Well, you make a lot of very good points there, absolutely. And you kind of get the feeling that Trump and some of his close advisors who are, not very experienced and not very worldly in these sort of geostrategic conflicts seem to think that it'll be over in 24 hours. That just doesn't happen. You just look at Ukraine. The casualty rates in Ukraine are the same as the First World War 110 years ago. So it is hugely complex. And people want instant gratification. Unfortunately, that is just not going to happen. However, I think Trump's buoyed on by what he did with Venezuela and Maduro. He anticipated doing the same in Iran, but that is not the case. And of course, while everybody's looking at the Middle East, Putin is quietly cracking on in Ukraine. And the final bit here, Julia, whatever happens in Ukraine and Europe has far more relevance to the security of this country, quite frankly, than what's happening in the Middle East.
And you're someone who's obviously, been in military action in the Middle East, and I know you were very involved, in Syria and trying to sort of help people there, civilians there. Is this the thing that actually is Europe right to say, well, Donald Trump, you told us, Europe's your problem. You deal with Europe. You deal with Ukraine. That's for you. Are they right now to say, fine, then we will, and we will concentrate our resources and our expertise and our military might and finances in trying to save Ukraine, rather than being involved militarily, if not the planning and the like, in what's going on in the Middle East?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. But like the UK, there are, the Germans and others have a lot of people in the Middle East who need to be protected.
Yeah.
So, I believe our focus should be very much in creating, a ceasefire and a just peace for Ukraine and Europe, and making sure that Putin, the great tyrant who's still, unfettered by the Americans, doesn't expand further westwards.
Yeah, indeed. Really good to talk to you. Always good to get your expertise. Hamish de Bretton Gordon, OBE, former British Army Colonel, yet another big mate of Philip Ingram's. Philip, I mean, there's so much ground to cover. I always think, you need 2 hours to cover all the different ins and outs of this. What do you make? What do you have to say?
Oh, I agree with everything that Hamish has said and all the rest of it, and we talk frequently. The thing about Donald Trump and about Europe turning around to the Americans and saying the Middle East has nothing to do with us, Donald Trump's going to turn around and say, right, Ukraine has nothing to do with me then.
Yeah.
Now, that is something that I've been saying will likely happen from Donald Trump's first time as president, because there are 3 big conflict areas around the world. We've got Ukraine, Russia. There was always tensions brewing in Europe. It's now turned into war. We've got the Middle East brewing up, and we've got Southeast Asia. Donald Trump's primary focus is Southeast Asia, and that has yet to brew, and it could go tomorrow.
But everyone is expecting, certainly with the military build-up from Xi Jinping in China.
Very, very much so. The Middle East is something that's America, Europe, and
but they're all linked, aren't they?
The globe, and they're all linked. And Europe, and therefore Donald Trump was saying, why should I have to deal with all 3 of them on behalf of the rest of the world? Europe, you deal with the bit in Europe.
Except what he's doing in terms of sanctions on oil and the release of oil and the ability of Russians to sell to places like countries like India, who prove themselves, by the way, not to be a friend of democratic West, and we need to keep pointing that out on this issue. But that's actually going to help Russian coffers to fight that war against Ukraine.
It is. It's very time limited at the minute in what he's doing. But why he's given his concessions to Putin, we don't know. And there's so many complexities around with Donald Trump and what he's doing. That's one of the biggest problems there is in trying to work it all out. I've got a theory about why he gives that concession to Vladimir
Putin. He asked him, and whenever Putin asks him something, he says yes. But there we are. 11:48 is the time. Up next, going to talk about something completely different, and that is the bizarre situation of one of King Charles's own youth charities deciding to cancel a plan to teach young girls and women how to box, because basically men were going to be allowed as part of this as well if they identified as women. And instead of just saying, well, maybe it would be a bit of a risk for men to be hitting women or girls in the face and therefore banning the men, which would be the obvious thing for a girls and women's boxing event, they decided to cancel the whole thing. We're going to talk about that up next with Jane Sullivan from the Women's Rights Network. That's up next. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Oh, another mad story to get you going. This is absolutely extraordinary. This is a story about a charity. It's King Charles's youth charity, the King's Trust. They were due to run, which seems like a very worthwhile course, back in February, called Get Started with Boxing and Fitness for Women. It was a course open to 16-year-olds all the way up to 25-year-olds. And basically, it was to help disadvantaged girls, to give, a bit of physical confidence and also ability to defend themselves, of course. It was also open to, for some bizarre reason, female identifying / presenting people. One mum wrote in and went, is that a good idea? Because you could basically have a 25-year-old man, we don't have to say biological males, we know what a man is, a man punching a 16-year-old girl in the face as part of this boxing course. And I'm not sure that's a good idea. So what would be the obvious solution, everybody, to that? What would be the obvious solution? Oh, I know. Ban the men from attending this course because it's for girls and women. No, the solution was to cancel the whole thing altogether, because if men who dress like they're women aren't allowed, no women can have it either. Let's talk about this with Jane Sullivan. She's sports coordinator at the Women's Rights Network. Good morning to you, Jane. I'm not sure we've got any rights, have we? Because unless there are some men involved dressed up as women and calling themselves Sheila, we don't have any rights.
Well, we haven't got any rights at this Bristol boxing course. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. The obvious thing would have been to follow the Equality Act and
follow the law.
Yeah, follow the actual law of the land. But no, let's ban the whole thing, get rid of the whole thing altogether. I mean, we have an absolute crisis in girls' sport at the moment. I'm a rowing coach. I've coached girls and women for nearly 20 years now, and it is extraordinarily difficult girls and some young women to be active. Yep. They drop out of sport. By the age of 14, 60% of girls have dropped out of organised sport. Yep. And I know from my own experience how difficult it is to get these girls engaged. Absolutely. So what do we do in Bristol? We tell them they can come on a course, and this course was aimed at very disadvantaged young women and girls. It was for people not in education, training or work. So, a
bit of confidence, get them also, communal activity, bit of confidence, bit of and physicality. It actually is really good for building up, resilience and.
Exactly. I mean, we're always told that sport can bring so many things to a person's life. Teamwork. Yes, you mentioned the R word, resilience, but also getting fit and feeling good about yourself. All of these things, which will help you in so many other areas of your life. So, I was just appalled that they decided to tell these young women and girls, effectively, you don't matter. The needs of these males matter more than you, and you can't have what will obviously be something that's very good for you. We're going to cancel it. And it's the King's Trust. It's one of the most respected charities in the country. It gets millions and millions of pounds in donations from private donors, public sector funding, absolutely millions. A charity of this stature should be following the law of the land.
Well, absolutely. We see again and again, apologies, but we see again and again that, local councils, houses of parliament not following the law of the land over, single-sex toilets. And people say, well, that's not a safety issue as much as a woman or a 16-year-old being punched in the face by a man. Well, actually it is, because, you're in a cubicle, you're in a toilet and there's only usually one way out. And if someone comes in and you're scared of, that's an issue. But we had the Olympics. We had the horrific sight of, 1 billion plus people being able to watch two men who both identified not as trans, but they've basically been raised as if they were girls, but they're not. They're clearly, you have to look at them to know they're women, to know they're men. Punching women in the face. A woman athlete, a top athlete, basically saying, you know what, after the first punch, I'm done. I'm not prepared. I could end up with brain damage, my career over, my life over. It's not worth it. We know the dangers. If a man punches a woman in the street, we rightly arrest him. But if it's in a sport and he's put a dress on or a bra, then we think it's being inclusive. I mean, this is crazy.
You're right, Julia. And we thought at Women's Rights Network that the Paris Olympics would wake people up to this and also make sports organisations and governing bodies actually look at their policies. And it's only recently that some of the combat sports in this country have changed their policies. We had World Boxing only last year finally agreed that males should be kept out of the sport and have introduced cheek swab testing. Only recently have sports like karate and taekwondo decided that it's not a good idea to have males in their sport. I mean, who'd have thought, you know, a sport where you kick people in the face might actually be dangerous.
No, indeed. But also, again, it's the simple fact there's a reason why women's sporting categories were introduced. And it was because basically pretty much no woman in the world can compete with the best men. I mean, and even as we know in loads of fields, even the top women in the world, top Olympic athletes, top Wimbledon champions could be beaten, you know, by a top 16-year-old high school age American, you know, a jock, because the difference in men and women's bodies, their physicality, every single aspect is so different. I mean, I hope people are actually going to ask King Charles about this, because he should be sodding well ashamed of this, and he should personally organise this course to go ahead and make sure it's only available to the people who it's supposed to be for, and that's women and girls.
100%. I hope. I'm not sure if King Charles watches your show, but if he does, a little note to the CEO of King's Trust.
Drop now. Have you get the women's on behalf of the Women's Rights Network. Write to King Charles and insist on a response. We want to know what is your response and get this reinstated again. If women aren't allowed to do it on their own, then we just won't allow them to do it. Again, we don't have any rights. If we have to have men pretending to be women in every one of our categories, then we don't exist anymore. We're just a figment of men's imagination. And I don't think that is what we are.
But it does come back to the fact that our politicians, Bridget Phillipson at the Department of Education and Lisa Nandy at the Department of Sport, have not come out and done their jobs. Lisa Nandy could have put a stop to all of this by stating that the Equality Act must be enforced and that the word woman and girl means female. And same for Bridget Phillipson. In schools, we're hearing horrendous stories of boys being allowed to play on girls' teams, being allowed to win all the races at Sports Day.
They could stop it all, but they're completely caught up with the madness. That's we're going to have to leave it there. Jane Sullivan, great to talk to you, sports coordinator at the Women's Rights Network. I mean, Philip Ingram, just very brief word, but this drives me insane, this stuff.
It's complete madness. His Majesty will know nothing.
Dangerous.
Very, very dangerous. His Majesty will know nothing about this, and it's the woke-rattery that lead these sorts of groups led by government policy at the minute.
He needs to answer to it, and he needs to set this up personally. He really, really does. It's not about being inclusive. There's nothing inclusive about men punching girls in the face. Right. That's not inclusive. So much more to talk about, so much more to get on the show. Do stay tuned. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you've just tuned in, you've missed a rip-roaring show, do have a look at our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Donald Trump threatening to, quote, massively blow up a major Iranian gas field. This after an Israeli attack on Iran, which then led to an attack by Iran on Qatar. The Royal Navy said they're unwilling to send warships to the Middle East because the situation is currently too fluid. But should we be more involved? Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, saying that Britain would rejoin the EU if his party took office. Well, there you are. It tells you everything, doesn't it, guys? And the prisons watchdog is deeply concerned, they say, of the release of dangerous criminals from high-security prisons without any efforts at all to basically, check that they are safe or safe for the public when they leave. Just to let you know, we've had the publication of the latest COVID inquiry report. I mean, such as these things are even worth bothering with, but this is module 3. This is looking at the reaction basically of the public services, the public sector, the NHS, how they dealt with COVID. I mean, I think we can all say we know pretty well the answer was pretty badly, but one of the items that from that very large report into module 3 that we've seen is that the stay home, protect the NHS, save lives messaging. Remember that. Anyone got post-traumatic stress disorder from just hearing those words? You can see the black and yellow stripes right now on the chevrons, can't you? But the stay home, protect the NHS, save lives messaging used during the pandemic in a bid to avoid the NHS being overwhelmed. This COVID-19 inquiry report says sent the message that healthcare was closed. No, really, did it? Oh, Baroness, you're so clever. How did you work that out? Yeah, we know that. What with all the people who died of cancer, will continue to die of cancer because it wasn't diagnosed or wasn't treated, and all the heart disease, the diabetes that wasn't treated, and all the other cases where people didn't go to the doctor because they were told to stay home because, God forbid, we need to make sure that some people in their 80s and 90s live an extra 3 months, so we're going to shut down our entire NHS. I'd like to point out, for those who say, well, it happened all around the world, it didn't. It did not. This is not what happened in most other countries. They did not shut down their healthcare, to all intents and purposes, to anyone other than someone who had COVID. Anyway, calm. I try to do that. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Philip Ingram is here, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Other bit of breaking news. Bank of England, as well, frankly, it's probably the best news we can get. They've left interest rates unchanged, the base rate at 3.75%. There were really no expectations it would carry on going down. Fears that it would have gone up given the pressures we're under. But Philip Ingram, just on that COVID inquiry report, I mean, everything they've said so far, like, if we'd locked down a week earlier, we would have saved 23,000 lives. Absolute abject nonsense. The evidence they've taken, a lot of it has been ridiculous.
Completely ridiculous, and the conclusions that are coming out were ridiculous. I was diagnosed with cancer during COVID. It did not stop me going to my GP from seeing me. It did not stop me.
I've spoken to lots of people who were stopped.
Yeah, well, I was then very lucky. It did not stop me getting the diagnosis, the surgery, and everything else on time. And it was 3 weeks, and surgery and out. What I think
I'm glad you were lucky, but it shouldn't be luck that you had a sane local health authority.
It shouldn't be. But the trouble is with what's coming out of this inquiry is not the detailed understanding of what needs to be done to not make the mistakes that were made beforehand. It's more bloomin' soundbite. Bits and pieces that are just going to get it put out around on social media and achieve nothing.
No, indeed. Well, just some more details from this. The chair of the COVID inquiry, Baroness Heather Hallett, again, who has betrayed herself in many of her questions as knowing, I mean, less than nothing about any of this. She says the UK's healthcare systems came close to collapse, her phrase, during the pandemic. We coped, but only just, she said, in the third Module 3 report, looking into healthcare systems across all 4 nations. She says that based on their harrowing testimony of 97 witnesses, finds that the UK entered the pandemic ill-prepared, with this fragility leading to profound consequences once the crisis hit. We had long delays, long issues as well. But despite the best efforts of healthcare workers, many COVID patients did not receive the care they would otherwise receive, and non-COVID patients did have their diagnoses and treatment delayed. One of my biggest issues about this COVID inquiry is whenever they talk about things, their obsession is always with COVID patients, people who died of COVID, and very little about everyone else in the country and people who died of other things, often untreated. I know she's also been looking into things like, mothers having to go to, scans their unborn children, discovering, as I have done in the past, their baby has died in a scan, and not having your partner with you because of COVID. For some, women forced to give birth alone because of COVID. Dads not being allowed to be with their kids when they're newly born. She's also said that NHS staff put themselves at risk with PPE unsuitable for what? Unsuitable for women and ethnic minorities.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to go. The lack of protective equipment for staff was something that became clear in the early stages of the pandemic. The report is saying supply got dangerously low. Look, we know that. Goodness me, we talked incessantly about that at the time. UK was not alone. Specialist masks designed to fit certain face shapes, in particular women and ethnic minority staff. I suppose it depends. Which ethnic minorities? Do people
you get different sizes of masks.
I get the women. You'd have smaller people with smaller faces. Surely, But anyway, you always have to get. Get something like that in.
As ever, it misses the key points. The country was warned that the number one threat was a viral type pandemic,
and did not prepare.
Nobody prepared for it, and therefore it was all trying to blame this and blame that instead of going, I should have stepped up and prepared. Such
preparations as we did have, which was that we would follow our pre-pandemic planning, which is that we would not lock down. We would not do silly things like government. It was all completely ignored. Yeah. So it's not much point planning if you're going to ignore everything in the first place. Anyway, okay, people. And breathe.
With your mask on.
I was just with your mask on, so not so well. As I was saying a little bit earlier, on Saturday it's our 10th anniversary here on Talk, and we were the only station at the time during lockdown, during COVID, actually questioning this. And in fact, one of our guests, Brendan O'Leary, is one of the people who actually helped persuade me that maybe we shouldn't be trusting what the health authorities are telling us, because they were literally telling us lies a lot of the time. And I'm now a conspiracy theorist. I've been very, very trusting of and I've learned that lesson, and never again. But I'm sorry, this COVID inquiry report is such an abject waste of our money. It's genuinely ridiculous. Yeah. Denmark did a report, I think, in 4 months. Yeah. And basically, and then the Danish government apologised to the Danish people for locking down.
Yeah, and it probably cost them 57 euros to do it. Ours is going to cost us 57 million euros.
Oh no! It's like I think we're up to 300 million already.
Well, crikey.
But come on, we don't do things by our. Hey, there's one thing we do well is spend a load of money unnecessarily on inquiries and reports. Don't you ever do this country down, Philip? We can't be good at something. Teenage pregnancy.
Wasting money.
Teenage pregnancy and wasting money on utterly pointless reports. Well done, everybody.
And undermining our own society. Yes.
Yeah. Here we go. Disruption to cancer screening costs lives. No.
Never.
No. Do you know who was talking about this on my show? I think as early as the first week of April in 2020. Carol Sikora. Carol Sikora, top cancer specialist. Anyway. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder from even seeing some of these faces again. Anyway, look, let's talk about something else which we're also unbelievably stressed about, as we should be, which is the immigration levels we've got at the moment. Now, we had that ridiculous Boris wave. Outrageous. I would say a moral outrage from Boris Johnson. Absolute treachery in terms of the vote that he got in 2019 to get Brexit done and to take control of our borders. And then at that point, it was a great idea to let in huge numbers in the Boris wave. In 2023, 1.4 million people came in. Okay, net net it was 944,000, but it was 1.4 million people in total came into this country, largely from outside this country, sub-Saharan Africa, the Indian subcontinent and elsewhere, but not from the EU. So apparently we were supposed to be happy. Massive betrayal. But a lot of those people are going to be eligible in the next couple of years to apply for permanent right to stay here, permanent settlement. At that point, they become eligible for universal credit and all the other benefits. Not, of course, that they need them because of all net contributors in highly paid jobs as engineers and astrophysicists. Of course they're not. They're on low pay, below average pay, and they're already claiming some sort of benefits. Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has got a consultation out on basically limiting people's right to stay here, having some conditions in terms of integration, speaking the language, your income, but also having to wait 10 years before you get that permanent settlement right. By extending it to 10 years, we're told we can save some 10 billion in welfare payments. I mean, I think we should save all the welfare payments by not making people eligible. However, Prime Minister and would-be Labour leader, she has put her tuppence worth in this week, and she has said that actually this is un-British, it's a breach of trust, it's unfair, pulling the rug out from under these hard-working, she says, migrant families. Well, if they're so hard-working, why do they need benefits, love? And she says they shouldn't make the change. Downing Street would not confirm that change would go ahead. Talk of a U-turn. Should there be a U-turn? Well, that's a long-winded way to get to my next guest. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, joins us now. Tony, good afternoon to you. Should we go ahead with that reform? Or is it enough or is it too much? Is it un-British? Tell us what you think.
Well, firstly, we need to distinguish legal from illegal migration. Yep. And Julia, these are people that did come legally, yep, albeit under the Boris way, which was overly generous. I think that's now been acknowledged right across the board. But what it means is that people who are here on temporary leave to remain will qualify for settlement quite soon, actually, some of them the end of this year. Yep. And that opens up all kinds of avenues, which could be quite expensive to the government. So I think Shabana Mahmood made quite a bold move, actually, in saying, well, I'm going to extend that period for another 5 years. It's putting off the inevitable, but it will mean that it will save Exchequer funding over the longer term. But even on illegal migration, Julia, she said that could be up to 20 or even 30 years.
No one who arrived here illegally should ever get permanent settlement.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's quite bold coming from a Labour Home Secretary. It's much stronger than we heard from Yvette Cooper. Yeah. It doesn't go as far as you or I would like. But I'm really interested now about what's going on in the political sphere there with these latest suggestions. Well, actually, that's not British, that's not fair, that's not reasonable. I mean, many countries in the world don't give you settlement after 5 years. Some of them don't give you settlement at all. You can have to wait for a very long time and earn your citizenship. So I did think what Shabana Mahmood was saying wasn't actually necessarily un-British. It was in keeping with the international process and seemed to be perfectly
and even more generous than many. I think most people, again, you don't keep abreast of all these things in the way that certainly you do, were just surprised to learn that people could be here for just 5 years and in a low-paid job, not even contributing very much, perhaps not even speak English properly, let's be honest, and they could still get the permanent right to stay here. I think people have been absolutely stunned to discover that.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, but we don't know what's going to happen now, do we? Because, we've had the announcements from the Home Secretary, lots of announcements about what's going to happen, out for consultation, and suddenly we hear these announcements from other people, politicians. Well, actually, we might not do that after.
Well, I mean, Angela Rayner's not in government, to be fair, but let's face it, this isn't all going to be going through before the local elections. We've had Sharon Graham of the Unite Union, big donor to the Labour Party, saying she believes that Labour are going to be, in her words, pretty much decimated at the local elections. Very few people... Very few people think that Keir Starmer's going to survive till some sort of challenge. We know Angela Rayner, she's been backed by Andy Burnham and others wanting to challenge. There does seem to be a big move to sort of shift Labour to the left to take on that green insurgency on the other side of the party. They've given up on those red wall reform voters. Sod it, we're not going to get those votes anyway. Let's try and be, more left than the Green Party. And that's a big concern, isn't it? Because until now, we've kind of had okay, they all talk a good game, but they don't actually deliver. But at least having the two major parties, Labour and the Tories, and of course, Reform as well, saying that they would cut immigration, they would tackle that issue, that at least, we were moving back into a more of a sensible centre ground, weren't we?
Yeah, we were, but the big battleground is the human rights arguments. Yeah. Julia, there is a big difference there. The Labour Party aren't interested in leaving the ECHR.
Yeah.
She has said she wants to look at Article 8 and Article 3 and try and get it changed.
Just not happening.
Whereas both of the other, yeah, I mean, but the other parties are quite clear on this now. I mean, the Conservatives, they dallied for about a year and then decided, yeah, we should. At least Reform said from the start. I think they recognise that. I saw a report just a couple of days ago, Julia, I don't know if you saw it, that actually some think tank said that actually human rights does not affect immigration. That's completely wrong. That is our biggest
heads in the sand.
It is our biggest problem, Julia. And if you were an immigration lawyer and you wanted to get people to stay, you will lodge a claim that you would breach their human rights by sending them back to their own, either because they will face inhuman and degrading treatment in their own country, because there's already inhuman and degrading treatment going on around the world, I'm afraid, in a lot of these countries. That's not hard to prove, or you're disturbing their right to private and family life, which is being disturbed. That's quite an easy case to make in front of a left-leaning adjudicator.
Yeah. Well, amazingly though, I'm amazed we actually have anyone who goes to prison anymore, because I thought your right to a private life was rather, impacted by being in prison. I'm waiting to the point where we can't put anyone behind bars at all. Well, you brought this up, but let's bring in a couple of cases here, and these are just mind-blowing. We've spoken a lot about one of these cases. This is a convict called Clevis Disher, 39-year-old Albanian, and he fought deportation, remember, by arguing that his son didn't like foreign chicken nuggets, so didn't want to go back to Albania, and he wanted to stay with his child. The argument being, under human rights legislation, that it would be too much of an impact, unduly harsh, I think the term was, on his 11-year-old son to have to join his father in Albania or be left in Britain without him. And this was argued by his barrister, and the courts accepted it. And he's been in this country since age of 15, this guy Disher. He's been here since 2001. He entered here illegally as an unaccompanied minor. Well, he says he was at the time. He lied about where he's from, made a dodgy asylum claim, proven to have lied. He got jailed back in 2017, then wasn't deported. He's still here now, and he has now won the right to stay in this country. From using the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, again, I'm utterly thrown by this. We've also got a Nigerian migrant. This is Gift Oladele, who's 24, found guilty last week of raping a 19-year-old woman near Wrexham last September. He had previously avoided deportation following basically sexually motivated imprisoning of a woman in Manchester. She feared being raped. He was jailed for 2 years in 2022 for that, but he was not deported because he appealed that, and then enabling him to go on to rape this teenager in Wrexham, this 19-year-old in Wrexham. He was able to block his deportation, claiming his right to a family and private life under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, this defies belief. You don't have to make up scare stories, as we're often accused of doing. These are happening before our eyes. They are documented in court. And yet that's not what the European Convention on Human Rights was supposed to be about.
No, and I can tell you, even way back when I was working in the department, Julia, I was putting cases up to ministers saying that you can actually remove this person, even though they claimed asylum under the 51 Convention. There is a get out if they're criminals, serious criminals, or security threats.
It's written in the article.
You can get them out of this. Yes, it's in there, but I'm afraid there is no such get out in the human rights legislation. And this was the fight over Rwanda. This was the Rob Jenrick fight in Parliament, where the Illegal Migration Act did not address that issue. That although we were going to send people to Rwanda and we could deny them into the asylum system because of the Refugee Convention allowed it, human rights legislation never did. And the last government did not go far enough in amending didn't go anywhere really in amending the human rights legislation. That's what the battleground is. If we want to get control back of our borders, we have to be able to reject immediately applications for human rights from people coming across from safe countries and say, I'm sorry, but you will be detained and deported, and you cannot claim Article 3.
But also, once you've committed a crime, I mean, anything above a speeding ticket, you're out. Tough. That's it. I just don't even understand. I wouldn't expect to be allowed to stay in France or America or Nigeria or Pakistan if I committed a crime in that country.
Yeah, and you probably wouldn't be these days in America. So, I mean, I think that's the political background, Julia, that we need to be talking about.
Where do you think this goes? We've got the Tories basically moving. And again, people say to the right, no, this isn't. I don't think it's a right-wing view thinking that people shouldn't be in the country who've arrived illegally and are committing crimes. This is just common sense stuff. But Tories are moving to more of a reform position. We had Labour moving to what looked like a Tory position. Now we could be seeing them moving to a Green position. We've got free borders, everyone's welcome, human rights. I mean, if we are in that territory, and again, even like returning to the calls from Sadiq Khan to, alongside the Green leader Polanski about, basically going back into the EU, and if you have a single market, customs union, you basically got free movement as well, and include all the people who are living now as immigrants in those countries being able to get here very, very easily, and we wouldn't be able to get rid of them. I mean, we are looking at, it's bad enough as it is now. How bad could it get if that happened?
So, I don't know how the politics are going to pan out. You'd know that better than me.
I don't think any of us know.
Well, I think the May elections are going to be really, really important. I think they did take notice from the last by-election in that the Green Party won that largely on a pro-immigrant vote, I think. Yeah. And so they will be looking to see, are there people out there that are more pro-immigration? That's where the argument's coming from now. But Reform have said from the start, to be fair to Reform, they've always said we must leave the ECHR and we must detain and deport migrants. I think they do need to do a little bit more work on that because it's really, really complicated to do that. But I think that they have got the political will and they haven't been given the opportunity. The Conservative Party had the opportunity and frankly, they blew it. And Labour so far have not been able to address this really big problem of how do you get persons from coming off a small boat from France onto a plane out of here, and how do you reform the system through the Home Office, through all of the appeals, and you have to disallow, I think, any application for protection from people coming by illegal routes. And I think that's what I'll be listening to when I'm deciding where to cast my vote. I think that's what a lot of people need to look at, is what are you actually going to do to stop the boats? And do you think that the policies that are currently being put forward by all of the parties and have they got the wherewithal, and the political will to do that?
That's going to be a big
part of it. Julia, then I'm afraid we will continue to see small boats coming across, not necessarily armadas, but that will continue to be a pain in our side forever. And you will see more cases like these ones where people are going into kidnappings and committing crime.
It's a lovely day today. It's a lovely day today. I'm expecting the numbers to be pretty good today in terms of the numbers of arrivals, and that's just illegal migrants. Again, what about people who arrive legally and then just never leave? Tony Smith, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you. Former head of the UK Border Force. Philip Ingram, itching to get in there.
I don't understand how countries like France, Germany, Denmark and others who still have the same European Convention of Human Rights legislation can deport people, and they do very quickly without all of this fuss somewhere else, and we can't. It's the same law.
Exactly.
So
it's because we've got activist judges.
And therefore the government, instead of changing European Convention of Human Rights, can turn around and give clear legal direction to our judges and say, stop it.
Get back in your box. I'm not a lawyer, but you can only read the articles to know your right to private life and family life. All of these things, there is a second paragraph. I've written it out many times. Exactly. Makes it really clear. Unless there is, there's a risk to national security or to criminality and the safety of the public and the like. Well, hello. I think raping people and I'm pretty sure. I think that may come under that category. Absolutely. 12:24 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Going to take your calls on whatever you want to talk about. Don't get me started on the COVID inquiry report again. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back. 12:27 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you wanted to call in about those migration stories, and particularly Angela Rayner possibly forcing a U-turn from the government. You know, it's all about the Labour leadership contact in the wake of the local elections, isn't it? That's what it's about. It's positioning, left or right, on whether or not it's un-British to limit the right of people to get permanent settlement here in the UK. 1.6 million who arrived under the Boris Johnson wave of migrants to basically claim permanent settlement here. And, oh, yeah, the right to benefits here within, well, even be able to claim this year as of that point. Let's talk to Barry, who's on the line in Norwich. Hello, Barry, what do you want to say?
First of all, happy 10th anniversary to everyone.
Thank you.
It's all right. Yeah, been with you since the start.
Where have you? You've been since...
I have, yes.
Oh, Barry, thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
That's no worries. Yeah, just like to make a couple of this illegal immigration advice.
Barry, this is really, really rude of me now. It's a really unclear line. Can you sort of, I don't know, move one step to the right or the left? Because that is the tech thing that normally works.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yes, it is. It works every time. What do you want to say?
God, I'm sitting on the windowsill, so this is a video call. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know about illegal immigration, right? I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired, right, of these illegal migrants coming across on boats and British people's rights being put to the back of the queue. These young girls and women that have been raped by these people, right? These people, then they qualify for human rights because they can't. They don't deserve human rights. They should be booted out of the country. I don't care where you put them. You can dip them in the middle of the English Channel, put them in the middle of the Atlantic. I don't care. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is I don't care anymore. I just want them gone.
Oh yeah, and every single time you just hear, I've got two daughters, right? One who's 28, one who's 17, right? And I swear to God, if anybody ever done anything like that to either of my girls, I wouldn't. Yeah, right.
We all know what you're thinking, and I've got plenty of room under my patio. Just saying. No, but that's the thing. It's just not. And again, all rights come with responsibilities. Also, all rights are competing against other people's rights as well. So, you know, someone's right to a private and family life, well, that's fine. Except you don't have a right to that after you've committed rape. Sorry.
Yeah, when you hear all these like left-wing do-gooders going on, but what about the white rapists? Yeah, well, you know, we're importing these ones.
We've got enough of our own wrong-uns. Yeah. Exactly. Let's not make it easy for people from other countries. But also the rate of criminality among people, particularly illegal migrants, but particularly people from countries where their attitude towards women is very different from what it is in the majority of people in the West. They have a higher rate of criminality. There are different nationalities in our prisons in different rates. By you know, Albanians, huge rate of criminality in our prisons. Afghanistan, Sudanese, Syrians. I'm sorry, there are clearly some issues here we need to tackle. We haven't got a massive issue with a load of Canadians coming over and raping and sexually assaulting our girls. I wonder why not.
Well, these illegal immigrants who are coming across on boats and they're getting rid of their passports and that, you know, they're not coming in. They don't suddenly get manners and morals and respect for women. Do you know what I mean? As soon as they hit the beach, right? You know, and we put them up in hotels and you got people who have fought for this country living in shop doorways. British people living in shop. Yeah. And I don't understand how people who have had this stuff happen to them, crimes by illegal immigrants, haven't sued the government, because surely the governor are at fault by allowing these people in. Every girl that gets raped or someone who gets assaulted, it's down to the negligence of the government.
Oh my goodness, we need a group action, don't we? Barry, couldn't agree with you more on every single front. Thank you very much indeed. Great call, and thank you so much for being with us the full 10 years. So those just tuning in, on Saturday. It's the 10th anniversary of the existence of the birth of our wonderful radio station. information. And we so appreciate all of you who've been here from the start. And indeed, if you just tuned in as of yesterday, welcome on board the Good Ship Talk. Christine is on the line in Somerset. Hello, Christine. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia. It's just a bit of a story. My husband is now since died, but he came over to the UK in 1967. He was a chef and he couldn't speak English.
Where did he come from?
He came from France, near Luxembourg. He came over with an ID card. He was stopped at immigration in Dover and he was imprisoned overnight and sent back on the next ship and told, they wagged a finger at him and said, if you want to come to the UK, you have to have a full French passport, you have to have a job to go to and somewhere to live. So he came back 3 months later. He'd got a job at a lovely hotel in Marlow, which is probably by the river. Couldn't speak a word of English. Within 6 months, he spoke English, but he was told every time he moved for accommodation or job, he had to go to the police station. So he got a job in London. He had to go to Hampstead Police Station, have his documents down, and he was told you can have health care, but you cannot have any entitlements to any benefits until you've paid into the system. And
crazy times.
We will deport you. Every time he went home to France, because he stayed a French citizen, he had to, coming back on the boat to Dover, he had to go to the purser and fill out an embarkation form to show he'd come back into the country. And he did that for 5 years, and then he went to the Home Office, had the condition. But when we left the EU, he had to go to Cardiff and re-register because he was no longer in the EU. And they took his fingerprints and gave him a card. And he'd been here. He'd worked in some of the best hotels in London. He was the head chef in a big hotel.
But he did it all the right way. Well, we actually had the checks, Christine. Wonderful story. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you've spoken to us before about your late husband, Christine in Somerset. Thank you so much for that call. Right now, we are giving you the chance to win 2 hospitality tickets to the British Grand Prix on Sunday, the 5th of July, with the full Racing Green trackside experience. This is the ultimate setup for race day. You'll get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village Corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock. Listen up to find out how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Absolutely, it's the perfect Silverstone race day experience for any F1 fan, so don't miss out. We're going to take a quick break right now. Up next, we're going to talk to a Green Party councillor, sadly, Zach Polanski, never available, interestingly, about what Zach Polanski has said about Britain rejoining the EU if the Green Party wins. Well, they're second in the polls at the moment. Could that be happening? That's up next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Coming up, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the COVID inquiry, their latest Module 3 report into basically the collapse of the NHS, well, near collapse, and the closing down of the NHS pretty much to an awful lot of people during the COVID period. We'll talk to a guest about that and what they have found. Again, the idea the COVID inquiry has come up with anything that either A, we didn't already know, or B, is completely wrong. It's quite bizarre. 300 million quid. Very well spent. I'm sure you will agree. Well, that's coming up in the next few moments. Right now, though, let's talk about what could happen at the next general election. Well, we've already seen the rise of reform. Have they peaked? Will they continue? Local elections may tell us quite a lot, but so did that local by-election in Gorton and Denton the other week. It showed us that the Greens are well and truly on the rise. Second in the polls right now, but they won that seat. And Zach Polanski, who's, let's face it, getting some pretty easy rides in interviews. Love you to come on my show, Zach. Come on. That'll be much more fun than being interviewed by Laura Kunsberg or anyone. Come on, you know you want to do it. But he said if the Greens did actually get elected, then they would rejoin the European Union. He says they'd also ditch silly things like GDP targets. They want to focus on well-being instead. Well, let's talk about all of this with Martin Abrams. He's a Green Party councillor. A very good afternoon to you, Martin.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Let's start with the small matter of the EU. It seems to me the Green Party doesn't seem to care about anything at all to do with any green stuff. I thought you were all worried about the world being about to end and St Greta's warnings, but apparently you're more worried about what happens in Gaza and the EU than anything else right now. But in terms of the EU going back in, are you saying that the Green Party would hold a referendum to then let people vote, which I'd be totally relaxed by if you had the mandate for a referendum? Or are we talking about going back into the EU without a referendum?
Well, Julia, you'd be surprised that I'm not going to make up Green Party policy on the spot during your interview. One of the good things about the Green Party is that policy is formed from the bottom up. So any policy on the EU will have to be debated and voted on by our party membership. Zach Polanski in his speech yesterday was, this
was a big policy address, wasn't it?
It was centred around whether people's lives have got materially better over the last 10 years. And I think the answer to that is a categorical no. And discussions around the EU will have to be part of how we can improve people's lives. I think the big thing is over the last 10 years, we've seen a massive increase in inequality, whilst those richest people at the very top have got even richer, with the richest 50 families in the UK now owning more than 50% of the nation's wealth, whereas the poorest 50% have got progressively poorer and poorer. So this was
they haven't got poorer. They're better off than they were, are they not? But they're just relatively poor. We're not living. Mate, I'm old enough to remember the 1970s. We're not living like the 1970s anymore.
Well, Julia, the increase in food banks over the last 10 years paints a very, very bleak picture. I'm a councillor in Lambeth, and I'm at the sharp end of, trying to help people that are at their wits' end in terms of facing hardship and not even being able to put food up on the table. So inequality has got massively worse.
Well, wait, hold on a minute. One of the things that makes it difficult.
Have got even richer.
One second. One of the things that makes it difficult. So I'm intensely relaxed about some people getting richer. If they're getting richer because they've invented something that I want to buy. So you want to invent an iPhone and I want to buy it, then I'm intensely happy you to get rich from selling me something I want to buy.
And I'm intensely relaxed about taxing them more as well.
Well, how much by? I'd like big companies to be paying the same amount of taxes small companies have to pay, and not being able to escape that. I think that's actually a pretty common view from people in this country. But I don't have a problem with people getting rich, but your party does.
No, we have a problem with inequality because that basically degrades the social fabric of our society, Julia. Can I ask?
Hold on a minute. No. Look, if everyone's a millionaire and then some people are billionaires, I mean, I don't think inequality in itself isn't necessarily an issue. It's whether people have got are too poor to be able to sort of, afford to eat things. But if our benefits do enable people to do that, here's the thing. I wanted to go back to the EU. Can we go back to the
food bank, Julia? Why do food banks exist?
Because food banks exist because people will go. People will go to. There's some failures in terms of actually getting benefits to people when they need them, and I've certainly spoken out about that. But
well, I can tell you as a councillor,
people ain't poorer than they were in the 30s, mate.
Julia, I can tell you as a local councillor in one of the most deprived boroughs in the UK, in Lambeth, people are really struggling to put food upon the table.
A lot of people.
That social safety net does not exist anymore.
Well, it does because we have a huge raft of benefits. Can I ask you? Go back to the question I asked you. We're talking about the EU, about going back into the EU, saying you're not making policy. However, are you also aware that when people who are on the bottom rung of the social and economic ladder, looking for jobs, the minimum wage jobs, when they are having to compete with people coming in from Eastern Europe, as we saw over the last 20, 30 years, in huge numbers, willing to work for much lower wages, that actually it is the working classes, the people at the very bottom of the pile who lose out the most?
Well, there's arguments, Julia, that the increase in migration over the last 10 years has happened since we've actually left the EU.
No, that wasn't what I asked you.
All these promises.
That wasn't what I asked you.
All these promises that were made by people like Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage hasn't been in power, my love.
Cheerleaded by media commentators like yourself, have absolutely not come to pass.
Sorry, okay, Martin, I hate to tell you this, whatever your fever dreams are about, Nigel Farage has not been in office. Okay, I come back to the question I asked you. Are you aware that free movements of people... it would be really helpful if you answered the question I actually asked you. You can choose your answer, but it would be nice if you didn't do a Keir Starmer at PMQs and just answered a question that someone asked 3 weeks ago. Are you not aware that one of the issues we've got for people at the bottom of the economic pile in this country is we've had this massive free movement of labour, initially from the EU, yes, and now, and under the Boris wave, I consider a massive treachery against the British people from the Indian subcontinent and sub-Saharan Africa, where people are coming in and working in low wages, that has actually had the biggest impact on people at the bottom of the pile.
No. The biggest impact, Julia, is the massive hoarding of wealth and assets by the richest people in this country.
They should be giving that money to those people.
Right. Julia, I listened to your question and I'm trying to answer
I'm asking the next question.
Can I just get my answer out?
Okay, go on.
The richest 50 families in this country...
You've said that already.
I'm trying to underscore the point.
Well, you don't have to repeat it. We've heard it already.
The richest 50 families in this country...
What do the rich people have to do with their money? What tax rate are you looking at? How are you going to get those taxes to pay? And why do you not... I don't understand why those people being rich is making other people poor.
Because they're hoarding the wealth.
What do you mean hoarding the wealth?
Well, if 50 people own as much as the poorest 50%, Julia, that is hoarding wealth.
What if some of those people have inherited it, they married it, whatever? But what if someone actually, say they invented a product like an iPhone that people wanted to buy, people had the money to buy it, and they gave them that money? Is that hoarding wealth?
Julia, there is enough resources in this country. We are the 6th richest country in the world. There is enough resources and wealth in this country for everyone to have a decent standard of living.
Yes.
Okay? If 50 people own as much as the poorest 50%, then that is hoarding wealth.
So we should give them that. So what do we do with that money? So we take a percentage, what percentage first, of money from those rich people, and we give it to people in what format? Is it in terms of public benefits? Is it the universal basic income? What is it? Tax credits? What is it?
Well, all of these things need to be looked at, but we have to start with looking at wealth taxes, Julia, because for far too long, the rich have got richer, the poor have got poorer. I know you're trying to make out that the poor aren't that poor, but people are really struggling.
People are struggling, but that doesn't necessarily mean the poor are getting poorer.
Right, okay. When was the last time you had to panic about whether you had enough money to buy food, Julia?
Probably in my early 20s.
Okay, all right. So you've probably forgotten then.
No,
right?
I've absolutely... Right. I've not forgotten. Okay. I had to beg for money at tube stations to be able to get to work. I know what it's like to not have money.
I get people ringing me up every single week in tears, desperate because they can't put food on the table for their children. Okay. I have to signpost people to food banks.
Yeah, okay.
We cannot accept that our society allows people to fall through the social security safety nets that have got worse and worse over the years because people have, cheered on policies that demonize anyone that has to rely upon the social security system in this country.
Well, I've certainly never done that. I demonise people who don't have to rely on it from using it.
Because right-wing cheerleaders try to demonise people.
Can we get back to the GDP issue? Your party leader, Zach Polanski, because we're repeating ourselves and it's just going round and round in circles, he said, he's much more interested, he says, than in GDP, in growing people's mental health, growing our public services, growing cohesion in our communities, he says, rather than a focus particularly on GDP growth. Do you agree with him on that?
100%. Yeah, I mean, we're living through a mental health crisis, and our government and our Treasury seem to be obsessed with percentage points and figures rather than the actual well-being of people. And I'll come back again. I'm sorry that we're going round in circles.
Repeat it again.
But it's important, okay? We need to protect people's well-being in this country, and currently the government is not doing that.
Well, one of the best ways of protecting people's well-being is people having jobs.
Yes.
Work is really good for your mental health.
Yes, but the economic focus, Julia, does not have to be on a perpetual state of growth, because you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that the Green Party don't discuss things like the environment. But
I never hear you mention it anymore. It's always Gaza.
But we cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. We have to look after our environment first and foremost. And that doesn't always come down to a few percentage points on GDP growth.
Though actually there's a very strong correlation between a wealthy country and a happy country. Happiness is very much linked actually to countries being wealthy.
But Julia, we're the 6th richest country in the world. And there is rampant inequality in this country.
Okay, we got the
people should not be relying on food banks. There has to be a different way rather than maintain the status.
Most people are relying on food banks, and most people who use food banks only able to go once or twice a year.
And one person in the 6th richest country in the world relying on a food bank is too many.
Yeah, it's usually down to debt and other issues there. There's lots of other factors. I know. Martin Abrams, we'll talk to you again. Green Party councillor Martin Abrams. I don't think we got very far on that, but Philip Ingram, very brief response to that.
Yeah, well, the people who need support fall through the social security safety net, as he said. But
do they
no. But hang on. But that's because there are so many sponges out there who are abusing the social security net, and there's so much money being wasted on.
There'd be more jobs if we didn't have an open border policy.
Illegal migrants and woke policies.
Absolutely. Deep sigh. 12:49 is the time. Coming up, we're going to talk to the editor of the Daily Sceptic, Will Jones, about that COVID inquiry Module 3 report. Apparently, our NHS came close to collapse during COVID. I know. I'm as surprised as you are, but don't worry. It cost us £300 million to find that out. This is Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, as we were during lockdown. And we're going to be talking right now about the latest report from the COVID inquiry. 300 million quid of your money and my money spent on an inquiry supposedly started in 2022, didn't actually start hearings until the middle of 2023. We've now got the third report, this one specifically looking into basically the impact on public services, in particular the health service, of the lockdown policies and COVID policies, and, well, just basically how bad it went. We've got a report, as I say, from Baroness Hallett, the chair, who I'm one of the least informed people I've ever met on any subject at all, is Baroness Hallett. But she says the UK's healthcare system came close to collapse during the pandemic. We coped, she says, but only just. She said there was a lack of PPE, unsuitable in particular PPE for women and ethnic minorities because the mask didn't fit them. Who knew? Anyway, let's talk about this with the editor of the Daily Sceptic, Will Jones, who was also someone who really was calling out an awful lot of the madness during the COVID pandemic and lockdown, who joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Will.
Good afternoon, Julia. Good to be with you.
I knew this one would just get my pulse racing and the heartbeat. Post-traumatic stress disorder, seeing some of the usual suspects on television again. I mean, look, 300 million quid spent. The last report said that apparently if we'd locked down a week earlier, we would have saved 23,000 lives, something that is blatantly, provably untrue. Have we learned anything new in this latest report?
We're just spending hundreds of millions of pounds to learn, and it's either stating the obvious that we already knew and that people like you and I were saying way back in 2020, 2021, or it's regurgitating some of the worst examples of misinformation and confusion from the pandemic. And as you've just quoted, we had last time, we had Baroness Hallett repeating that awful modelling from Neil Ferguson, from Professor Lockdown, Professor Pants Down, as he got nicknamed because of the scandal, of course, with breaking lockdown himself to have an affair. Outrageous, of course, but they were all at it, of course, the hypocrisy of these people who were pushing these lockdowns, but actually not really following it themselves, but just repeating this modelling, the claiming that supposedly if we'd locked down a week earlier, as you say, that we would have saved thousands of lives. Complete nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, and provably untrue. And what was fascinating, of course, when we had in the calls back in 2021 in the Christmas, was around the time that Partygate was exposed, and so there was massive pressure from backbench Tory MPs who'd campaigned against lockdowns. The Steve Bakers likes basically saying to Boris Johnson, "You're going to be out if you lock us down again." And there was all this modelling that if we didn't, with Omicron, that was the one which was much milder, already proven to be much milder in South Africa. The evidence was so clear. I spoke to the GP who was doing a lot of that work out there on the air. I remember speaking to her. And we had this ridiculous thing where we had, again, these reports that suggested that we would have this many cases and this many deaths if we didn't lock down. And as it was, we didn't lock down. And we didn't follow that curve whatsoever. It was just a tiny little bump in the road. I mean, smaller than a road hump, on a 20-mile-per-hour zone. And yet, for some reason, none of the people who were saying, but we would have had lots of thousands of people dying if we didn't lock down, they all went very quiet all of a sudden. But no one went, hey, hold on a minute, maybe all of our modelling has been wrong all along.
It's garbage in, garbage out, and that's always the problem with these models. And of course, we had it again. They may have gone silent after their predictions failed in 2021, but then last winter, the winter just gone, of course, we had the super flu, this warning about it being this crazy flu that was going to again bring the NHS to the brink of collapse, like it seems to do every year, which suggests that maybe there's a problem with their emergency and their winter planning. But here we had this supposed super flu, and of course, in fact, looking back, it was all a complete load of nonsense. Again, it was a below-average flu season. It was just that it started earlier.
Exactly.
So the curve starts earlier. Obviously, it's above average for that week in the year, for October or whatever it is. But that doesn't mean it's going to keep on going. And that's what they kept on doing. They kept on saying, well, if it carries on growing like this until the whole country is sick in hospital, then everything's going to collapse. But of course, it doesn't do that. It's never done that. A flu or a flu-like virus has never hospitalised the entire country.
This is the thing that I think, and I'm sure you found this very frustrating. You do this along with Toby Young, this fantastic newsletter, which was my first read every morning during all of this. But I'm thinking, everyone said to me, "You're not a doctor or a scientist." I'm like, I know, and that's what blows my mind, is that you've got doctors and scientists saying things which anyone, even without medical training, knows not to be true, as proven by the evidence. And of course, we have the clear evidence from Sweden, which again, people completely still say lies about that. Sweden did not lock down. They advised against large groups gathering, people who were vulnerable to protect themselves. Otherwise, life carried on as normal. Children went to school every single day, and whilst ours were out for the best part of a year and a half longer in America. And what a surprise! They don't just have lower deaths than us; they have lower deaths than any of the Nordic countries, which are a direct comparison. We've had South Dakota versus North Dakota. We've had all this evidence, and yet no one ever seems to look at the actual sodding evidence. It's quite painful, isn't it?
Oh, it's maddening. And Sweden, of course, has already wrapped up its own inquiry for a fraction of the price, a fraction of the duration, and have already set out their recommendations and conclusions.
And they made mistakes too over care homes, and they admitted them, and they're going to change their policy.
Exactly. What we have to remember is that scientists and doctors, they're just as prone to groupthink and hysteria as the rest of us. It's scary to think that. We think of them as being experts, and they are experts, but we also think of them as being objective, but they're not always objective. I was talking to one doctor who was a leading skeptic of lockdowns, but initially she says she was taken in as well, and she says she was talking to a doctor, a GP, I think, recently, who said that he's looking back now, he can't believe what he thought and said at the time. He was also taken in by it, they were taken in by it, and people are gradually waking up over the last several years, and we're looking back and we're going, we can't believe we did that. And people are but the problem we have is the inquiry. Baroness Hallett doesn't seem to be keeping up with that. No. She still seems to be stuck in the past. She still seems to be stuck in 2020.
Yeah, and the really, really scary thing is we did know pretty much everything that we found out later back in March 2020. If you look at the press conferences given in early March 2020 by the Prime Minister and the Chief Scientific Advisor and Chief Medical Officer, they were saying everything that we discovered it was just mostly old people, not kids. No, we knew that. We knew that it would go and they would come down. We knew all that as well. There'll be more than one wave. We knew all that as well. And everyone's ignoring everything in pre-pandemic planning as well. It is genuinely painful. The worry is most people in this country will still think that if we have another pandemic of any sort, we should lock down. So I'm afraid the lessons have not been learned. We're going to need your services for a lot longer. This is Talk. Thank you very much, Will Jones, editor of the Daily Sceptic, for joining us. Philip Ingram, it is unbelievably frustrating, isn't it?
Oh, completely frustrating. They haven't even identified the proper lessons. It's all been about trying to get the gossip sound bite side.
Oh, there was a lot of that, the WhatsApps and what was, who